The man merely bit a level 5 Rakshasa to death, and yet this act shocked the very peak of human power. Because the Rakshasa was not killed in an instant, but had its neck bitten through, bleeding out slowly to death. He, known as the human weapon of mass destruction, had worked for 60 years and never seen a power user like this. You have to know, Rakshasas have incredible regenerative abilities in the Yellow Sands. Except for having their heads chopped off, they're basically immortal. And yet, the man before them was only a mere level 1 power user. In this world, the conditions to awaken as a power user are extremely harsh. Only when Rakshasa blood enters a human's body does a human have a minuscule chance of gaining Rakshasa abilities. The ability level matches the Rakshasa's level, so the level is fixed and cannot evolve. Before I encountered a level 1 Rakshasa and awakened my abilities, I was just an unemployed graduate living off my parents. Because I suffered from panic disorder, I failed the civil service exam 5 years in a row. Even so, my petite mother still supported me unconditionally. She once went to a fortune teller who said my exam failures weren't due to panic disorder, but because my father died on the mountain we used to visit. His spirit was blocking my path. As long as I went up the mountain to pour wine and appease his soul, then I could pass the exam. So the next day, I took a boat back to my hometown on the mountain. Opening the familiar courtyard gate, it was as if I saw my childhood self again and my father's strange behavior that day. A twisted face with a trembling gaze, mouth wide open, muttering in fragments. I stood at the doorway, my phobia flaring up again. My heart ached and throbbed, and I could only breathe rapidly to ease the discomfort. After it eased a bit, I took out some wine from my backpack and poured it as an offering to my father. I didn't really believe my father was dead, but my panic disorder did start because of him. Just to be safe, I decided to also pray to the mountain god here. As I was praying to the mountain god, yellow sand suddenly began to spread around me. A bad feeling rippled through my heart. Was the mountain on fire? I grabbed my backpack and rushed down the mountain, wanting to get away before anything happened. Safety first, after all. As I was running down, the phrase safety first suddenly jolted me, freezing me in place. I looked toward the source of the voice, and through the thick yellow sand a strange figure emerged. I was puzzled, staring at the black silhouette until it fully revealed itself. A monster with a mutilated head, a swollen belly, holding a bamboo pole. I rubbed my eyes hard, thinking I was hallucinating. But when I opened them again, the monster hadn't disappeared. Instead, it was even closer. Realizing something was wrong, I quickly tried to move and escape. But the next moment, the bamboo pole pierced through my abdomen. The intense pain dropped me to my knees. Unbelievable. This was really happening. Was I really going to die here? Thinking of my petite and gentle mother, I suddenly snapped awake. I couldn't die yet, I had a reason to stay alive. Gritting my teeth through the pain, I forced myself to stand. But the Rakshasa in front of me suddenly wrapped itself around my body, its legs locking tightly around my waist, maw opening wide at my shoulder, razor-sharp teeth tearing through my clothes and into my flesh. It was a soul-piercing sensation of being ripped apart. In that moment, I seemed to hear my father's muttering from that day. Just the simple words, "Eat it," yet they were an irresistible demonic chant, making me instinctively bite into the creature's neck. In just an instant, the Rakshasa's neck was torn apart, blood gushing out like a spring. As the Rakshasa screamed in agony, my consciousness drifted into a strange scene. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a man and a woman squatting in front of me. The monster and the yellow sand had both vanished. Just as I was feeling confused, a man in a colorful shirt stepped forward and grabbed my hand, urgently asking what I had seen. All I could do was answer honestly. As I was about to go down the mountain, yellow sand suddenly spread everywhere, and a monster appeared and stabbed me in the stomach. After I spoke, I checked my abdomen and found that the wound where I had been stabbed was perfectly fine. The two exchanged a glance. Yesterday, the Rakshasa alarm had sounded and then stopped. They thought it was a malfunction, never expecting it was me who had killed the Rakshasa. The woman still looked at me in puzzlement, because even if a human became a power user by receiving Rakshasa blood, they couldn't use their powers immediately. The man beside her didn't seem to care. He figured that since they couldn't figure it out now, they'd just have to wait and see. The important thing was that I survived a Rakshasa attack, so I definitely had Rakshasa powers now. And today just happened to be the new recruit orientation. The man smiled and slung his arm around my shoulder, saying I should go take part. So still completely confused, I was sent to the new civil servant orientation for special hires. Looking at the strange expressions on everyone's faces, I had no idea why I was here. Just then, footsteps sounded outside the door. A woman in red clothes with purple hair stepped onto the podium. She was Yu Yong-yoon, the director of Seoul headquarters and the chief officer for this special recruitment training. Seeing someone in charge arrive, I hurriedly raised my hand, saying I thought I was in the wrong place. But Yu Yong-yoon's answer left me petrified on the spot. She said that based on the Gangwoo team's report, I was officially a special government officer starting today. For the Ministry of Environment's special personnel, the most important thing was secrecy. No matter if it was family, relatives, or anyone else, I couldn't reveal a single detail, otherwise I'd be violating the national security law and subject to legal punishment. At that moment an alarm sounded, meaning there was a Rakshasa sighting. We had only been in training a few minutes, when Director Yu Yongyun hurriedly led us up the mountain, saying we'd use this chance for practical exercises. When we arrived, we saw a Rakshasa over 3 feet tall pinned to a rock by a woman's knife. I was so terrified on the spot that I collapsed to the ground, and the other new recruits were just as shaken by the sight. However, Director Yu Yongyun suddenly shouted, "Practical training starts now." The Rakshasa before us was massive, but in fact it was the weakest kind. Every time a Rakshasa appears, it's accompanied by yellow sand weather. The yellow sand concentration ranges from level 1 to 10. The higher the level, the more dangerous the Rakshasa. Right now, the yellow sand alert was only at level 1. To reassure us, she pointed at Kang Chana standing nearby and said, "Section Chief Kang Chana has already stabbed a knife into its head, so the Rakshasa can't move right now." With that, she told us to use our powers and fight the Rakshasa. Kang Chana looked at me in the crowd, a little puzzled, curious about what power I'd gained, that I could kill a Rakshasa the moment I awakened. What she didn't know was, at this moment I thought they were all insane. To have me fight something that huge was a complete joke. Just facing its aura was enough to trigger my panic disorder. But this time the panic attack felt different. After a brief pain in my chest, I was overwhelmed by hunger. And a huge black monster quietly appeared behind me, placing a black hand on my head. It opened its yellow eyes and simply said, "Eat." The next moment I couldn't stop drooling, and all I could think about was devouring that Rakshasa. Suddenly a hand poked me and I snapped out of it. It turned out to be Xianwu Eden, the only level 7 Rakshasa power user among the new recruits, with the ability Break. He asked if I'd been scared to tears. But I had no idea what had just happened. I wiped the drool from my mouth and replied, "I'm just a bit hungry," which only earned me a look of disdain from him. Director Yu Yongyun stood on higher ground, and before the others started fighting, she had some instructions. She told us to pay attention to the thick yellow sand around us. This is what the Rakshasa spits out. The higher the Rakshasa's level, the higher the sand concentration. In the yellow sand, Rakshasas have powerful regenerative abilities. As she spoke, she pulled out a small knife, cut a wound on her palm, and the wound healed at an astonishing speed. In other words, as power users, we also gain healing abilities in the yellow sand. But whether you're a power user or a Rakshasa, a fatal wound is still fatal. Most importantly, we power users can only use our powers within the yellow sand. Once we're out of it, we're just like ordinary people. But in Eden's eyes, Yu Yongyun's explanation was just a waste of time. He secretly bit his lip open, letting the yellow sand flow into his body through the wound. A surge of power erupted inside him in an instant. Then he put on his gloves and suddenly activated his ability. With the sound of fingers snapping, the iron knife stuck in the Rakshasa's head shattered. Kang Chana immediately noticed and shouted, "Be careful." At the same time, the freed Rakshasa's pent-up rage erupted all at once. It slammed both fists down, shattering the ground, and started attacking with the flying debris. Kang Chana tried to step forward to stop it, but Yu Yongyun blocked her with one hand, saying this was training for the new recruits and she shouldn't interfere. "But this is too much for the newcomers," Kang Chana retorted sharply. But Yu Yongyun was adamant. "I don't think we have time for practice anymore. If they can't handle a Rakshasa of this level, they'll be dead once they step out of here anyway." At that moment, the Rakshasa seemed to catch a scent with its nostrils, whirled around abruptly, and locked its eyes on me in the crowd. I was completely baffled, having no idea why this Rakshasa was staring at me. The next second, the Rakshasa attacked without hesitation. A blade hidden in its flesh shot out, targeting me in the crowd and piercing straight through my left arm. The sharp pain made me clutch my wound and cry out in agony. But the Rakshasa wasn't done with me. It leapt over the crowd, landing right in front of me. Just as it reached out to make its next move, 2 centipedes burst from the ground, wrapping around its entire body. It turned out the centipede power user was the first to launch an attack. Another, with tiger claw abilities, followed up. And while the centipedes held the Rakshasa, she darted forward and struck its head with a powerful blow. Half the Rakshasa's head was instantly blasted away. The 2 who'd attacked first smiled, thinking they'd finished it off. But the next second, the Rakshasa's half-exposed, bloody head started sucking in yellow sand, and its head fully regenerated, not a trace of damage left. The 2 power users were instantly shocked. They knew Rakshasas could heal, but hadn't expected such monstrous regeneration. While they were distracted, the Rakshasa tore the centipedes from its body. Since the centipedes were connected to their user's hands, the Rakshasa swung its arms, using him as a weapon to smash into the female power user, then yanked him along the centipede toward itself, grabbing the man by the neck and lifting him up. It opened its mouth, ready to devour him. But at that moment, with the crisp crack of snapping fingers, the Rakshasa's jaw was suddenly broken. Howling in pain, it had to let go of the man it was about to eat. Eden, the only level 7 power user among the recruits, had finally stepped in. While others shied away from the Rakshasa's flesh blades, he didn't care in the slightest. He simply took off his gloves slowly, twisted his own hand forcefully, and the Rakshasa's head before him was crushed and twisted apart. Eden found it a bit dull. I was hoping to try a bit more, but this Rakshasa's body is still too fragile. Standing behind him, Kang Chana seemed to figure something out after witnessing his ability. She accused Eden, asking if he'd broken her knife on purpose and woken the Rakshasa. Eden told her, "Don't go accusing people without proof." But Kang Chana didn't care. She grabbed Eden's hand and demanded he snap his fingers again to see if her knife would break. As the two argued, Yu Yongyun started applauding, a satisfied smile on her face. She praised the new recruit's performance. But as she was complimenting us, her expression darkened because she realized I had disappeared from the crowd. Yu Yongyun sighed and shook her head. As a power user, to be so frightened by a Rakshasa that he ran for his life. He's just not cut out for this. But Kang Chana beside her sensed something was off. The Rakshasa had been killed, but the yellow sand here hadn't faded, and in fact was getting thicker. With her words, everyone else finally started to catch on. Meanwhile, I was frantically running through the jungle. They wanted me, a special government hire, to get rid of monsters. Yeah, right, all I wanted now was to escape this dangerous place as fast as possible. But as I was running, I froze in fear at the sight before me. Because right in front of me stood a massive door, with yellow sand constantly pouring out from within. Just as I was wondering why there was a door in the middle of the mountain, a Rakshasa stepped through it. I hid in the bushes, clamping my hand over my mouth, not daring to make a sound, thinking how incredibly unlucky I was. Just as I'd barely escaped, I ran straight into another Rakshasa. I peeked out, but the Rakshasa was nowhere to be seen. What I didn't expect was that it was actually crouching right behind me. At the same time, bad news came from Yu Yongyun's side as well, saying that not only had the alert not been cleared, it had been upgraded to a level 3 Rakshasa alert. Hearing the update from Yosak, Yu Yongyun was stunned. She'd never heard of Rakshasas appearing in the same place consecutively. Unlike the director, Kang Chana was anxious to know the exact location of the Rakshasa's appearance. Meanwhile, I was once again being chased by the Rakshasa, forced into parkour mode. With death looming over me, adrenaline gave me endless strength, driving me to keep running. Because stopping meant certain death. Tears streaming, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Will someone please save me?" Just then my foot caught on a rock, and I went sprawling to the ground. But that very fall let me spot a place to hide. I scrambled up and dashed toward a nearby house, hid inside, panting heavily. I pressed my face to the crack of the door, peeking out to see if the Rakshasa had followed. Sure enough, the Rakshasa had tracked me here. Judging by the bone spikes floating above its head, this Rakshasa's power was probably launching those spikes as weapons. Before I could think further, an old grandmother pushed open the door and entered the yard. Even with the 3-foot-tall Rakshasa right in front of her, she couldn't see it at all, only confused as to why there was so much yellow haze in broad daylight, making it hard for her to see anything. I watched everything unfold from inside the room. The grandmother was in danger and I had to help her. But as a power user, I had no idea what ability I'd awakened. My only lifeline might be what Yu Yongyun had mentioned. As Rakshasa-empowered humans, we also had regenerative powers in the yellow sand, but a fatal wound would still kill us. Was it really worth sacrificing myself for a complete stranger? As I struggled between hiding and rescuing her, the grandmother outside seemed to sense something standing in front of her and softly asked, "Is that you, Miss Kim?" The bone spike Rakshasa actually mimicked her voice, repeating, "Miss Kim, Miss Kim." Hearing someone echo her words, the grandmother grew angry, stepping forward to get a better look at who was there. But the moment she took a step, her eyes widened in terror. A Rakshasa over 3 feet tall was slowly approaching her. She collapsed to the ground in fright, exclaiming, "What on earth is that?" The bone spike Rakshasa kept walking, still repeating Miss Kim in a human voice. Then it aimed a floating bone spike at the old woman, and with a flick of its finger, the spike shot out in a blur. After a rain of blood, the grandmother opened her tightly shut eyes, only to find a young man had shielded her from it all. Despite the agony, I asked if she was hurt. But the next second, I collapsed onto her. My entire left arm had been completely severed by that blow, blood spurting everywhere. Even the grandmother was horrified. Using the last of my strength, I pushed her away, telling her to run as fast as she could. Right then, I cursed my own luck. Why did I have to get a level 1 Rakshasa's power, just as useless as my life's resume? The bone spike Rakshasa was closing in, and the grandmother's anxious face was growing blurrier. Inside, I felt a deathly silence. I hadn't saved the grandmother, and now I was about to die too. Just as I was giving in to despair, yellow sand began to flow into my severed arm. As the sand coursed through my blood, my Rakshasa power was fully awakened. Sharp fangs erupted between my once neat teeth, and I lunged at the Rakshasa like a lightning-fast leopard, jaws bared. Meanwhile, Kang Chana, searching for the Rakshasa in the jungle, heard the commotion and, rushed over at once, but the scene before her left her wide-eyed in shock. She saw me straddling the Rakshasa, tearing open its neck with my teeth. Her face was full of astonishment. She'd never seen anyone fight a Rakshasa with their teeth. But while she stood stunned, the Rakshasa's counterattack was even fiercer. It grabbed my head, lifted my body, and slammed me brutally into the wall. That blow completely disabled me, but on instinct, I chewed and swallowed the chunk of flesh I'd bitten from the Rakshasa. The sight shocked even the Rakshasa, who'd eaten countless humans. Now a man was eating its flesh instead. But the next moment, the Rakshasa felt something wrong. Its body began to wobble. It realized the wound I'd bitten still hadn't healed. Kanchana, who just arrived, noticed this too. But after just a moment's hesitation, she shot forward at full speed toward the Rakshasa. She knew now wasn't the time to study why the wound wasn't healing. As she vaulted over the Rakshasa's head, Kanchana grabbed one of the floating bone spikes barehanded. The moment her hand touched the spike, its sharp edge sliced her skin open, which was exactly what she wanted. Using the wound caused by the Rakshasa's spike, she activated her power. Her ability was also a level 7 iron power. Enraged, the Rakshasa let out a beastly roar, unleashing a full-force attack, firing all its bone spikes at Kanchana. But with a flick of her wrist, she sent every spike hurtling back at the Rakshasa. Taking advantage of the distraction, she leapt forward, blade in hand. A flash of cold steel cut through the air as she struck, slicing the Rakshasa cleanly in half from head to tail. Blood splattered across her face, her eyes cold and steely. Once the Rakshasa died, the yellow sand around us faded away. Kanchana immediately went to help the unconscious grandmother. When the grandmother woke, she asked in a daze what had happened. But Kanchana simply told her a wild boar had wandered in but had been chased away. The old woman didn't doubt a thing, only kept complaining about wild boars coming down from the mountain to ruin her crops. After the sand disappeared, ordinary people's memories of the Rakshasa vanished as well. Kanchana assured her that the government staff would handle the rest, and urged her to go get some rest. After watching the old woman close her door, Kanchana turned, her expression instantly going cold, and walked over to me, looking me up and down. She wondered just who this new guy really was. She'd never seen such astonishing regeneration. The severed arm had already grown back in so little time. She couldn't understand. Was I really just a level 1 Rakshasa power user? After everything was over, I received notice to report to the Ministry of Environment for work the next day. But the brutal scenes of the Rakshasa kept echoing in my mind, an inexplicable shock lingering in my chest that I just couldn't shake off. Lying in bed, I thought, no matter how desperate I am for a job, I'll never become a special recruit. With that, I pulled up the covers and went straight to sleep. Before long, I drifted into a deep dream. In my dream, I was in a place packed with Rakshasas fighting and screaming. Their roars rose and fell as they surged forward, as if some force was driving them to flee that place. Then a voice repeatedly calling, "Come back," pulled me out of the dream and back to reality. When I woke, I was drenched in sweat. This wasn't the first time I'd had that dream. Ever since the new recruit training ended, it was always that same scene. Seeing light streaming through the window, I thought I'd slept until morning. But when I opened the window to look outside, I realized Qingjai Mountain was on fire. And inside the mountain, a magma Rakshasa had appeared. At the same time, a water-type power user leapt into the air and summoned heavy rain. The seemingly harmless raindrops made the magma Rakshasa cry out in pain again and again. Then another, an ice-type power user who'd been waiting, used the falling rain to create frost, blasting it at the Rakshasa. Working together, they completely froze the magma Rakshasa in just a few breaths. The female power user asked the team leader in confusion, "Aren't Rakshasas not supposed to show up at night?" The team leader told her to focus on containing the wildfire, while he stayed behind to deal with the magma Rakshasa. With that, he conjured a chain blade of ice, and the moment he gripped it, a chilling aura rippled through the air. He charged forward with explosive speed, aiming for the frozen Rakshasa. Just then, a black energy seeped through the ice and entered the Rakshasa's head. A pair of green eyes in its mind issued an irresistible command, "Bring him here." In that instant, the magma Rakshasa shattered the ice, holding it captive. It clenched its fist, muscles tensing for a strike, then launched a punch so powerful the air itself seemed to explode, blasting the team leader 100 meters back. He only stopped when he crashed into a tree. That full-force punch carried not just terrifying power, but a scorching heat that could burn flesh. The female power user, about to leave, screamed in worry, "Team leader." But the black energy's boost to the magma Rakshasa didn't stop there. Even its back erupted with waves of molten lava. Both power users could tell this Rakshasa was growing stronger by the second. Meanwhile, every device at Seoul HQ flashed red with alarms. Rakshasas were attacking 20 mountains nationwide tonight. Their pattern of appearance had completely changed, and it had all started at the new recruit training a week ago. Before Yu Yongyun could think further, her subordinate reported an urgent call from the Busan Response Center. She quickly switched channels to take the call. On the line, Busan director Bae Myung-sik reported some very bad news. The gate near Busan's Jumjeong mountain hadn't closed for 3 days. No matter how many they killed, those things just kept pouring out of the gate. And the Jumjeong mountain team was completely exhausted. Yoo Young-yoon, cold sweat on her brow, asked if he knew why the gate hadn't disappeared. From what we can tell, the Rakshasas keep muttering something on sight. Our Rakshasa language interpreter says they're saying, "Bring him here." Yoo Young-yoon immediately shouted, "Bring who?" But Bae Myung-sik said he wasn't sure. He just had a feeling they had to bring someone. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Yoo Young-yoon quickly dialed another number. A cell phone rang inside a helicopter, and a blue-haired man picked up. On the other end, Yoo Young-yoon explained the crisis at Jumjeong Mountain in Busan and asked him to hurry over. But the blue-haired man simply replied that he was already there and hung up. He then leapt out of the helicopter, streaking across the sky like a blue meteor. As he passed through the layer of yellow sand, he opened his mouth wide and inhaled deeply. Veins bulged at the corners of his eyes, his power activating, and as it did, he twisted space itself with himself as the center. He landed steadily on top of the gate. Below the gate, a female power user noticed his arrival. She wondered aloud why someone had suddenly appeared on top of the gate, and warned the blue-haired man it was dangerous up there and to come down. But just then, a Rakshasa fighting nearby spotted the opening in her guard, and slashed at her with a blade-like leg. However, thanks to her sixth sense, she dove forward and narrowly dodged the fatal blow. But when she looked back, despair filled her face. She knew she couldn't avoid the Rakshasa's next strike. Right at that moment, the blue-haired man tore open a rift in space with his bare hands. As he pulled, the crack widened rapidly. A corresponding rift appeared behind the Rakshasa's head. The blue-haired man reached through the rift, grabbed the Rakshasa by the head, and with a powerful yank, he ripped out the Rakshasa's head, spine and all. Everyone at Jumjeong Mountain stared, jaws dropped in shock. The blue-haired man jumped down from the gate and said, "Good work, everyone." He told them to go rest. He'd handle the rest. Hearing praise from their idol, the Jumjeong Mountain team leader burst into tears. The female power user leaned in and asked who he was. The Jumjeong Mountain team leader replied proudly, "You newbies don't know yet, but he's the founder of the Yellow Sand Special Response Unit and the strongest Rakshasa power user alive." Director Jeong Il-du. Jeong Il-du stretched his muscles, then placed his hand on the ground. A wave of spatial energy rippled from his fingers, and 10 spatial cracks shot out from between each finger. These fissures snaked across the ground and up the mountain, finally bursting from the peak and streaming skyward. Faced with these 10 rifts, Jeong Il-du chose one to pry open first, and that rift led directly to Qingjai Mountain in Seoul. At this moment, faced with the magma Rakshasa powered up by those green eyes, the Qingjai Mountain team leader's attacks were completely ineffective. Not only had his female teammate been knocked unconscious, he himself was at the end of his rope. He shouted, "Section Chief Lee, wake up!" But the Rakshasa gave them no chance, swinging its furious fist straight at him. The Qingjai Mountain team leader quickly summoned his power to create an ice wall, but the Rakshasa shattered it with a single punch, sending him flying, skidding several meters across the ground before coming to a stop. The Rakshasa's fists came crashing down again, and the team leader hurried to shield his teammate beneath him. Just as he thought this was the end, a spatial rift suddenly opened behind the magma Rakshasa. The rift pulled at the Rakshasa, with Jeong Il-du on the other side, grabbing the Rakshasa by the head, pulling it all the way through from the other side of the rift. Then he casually tossed it aside. But that seemingly effortless toss left the Rakshasa devastated, as if it had suffered a massive blow. He then opened his palm and pushed forward to the right. A vast spatial force drove those 10 rifts, one of his evolved abilities. Spatial transfer. In an instant, all the Rakshasa attacking 20 mountains nationwide were forcefully relocated. Staff at Seoul HQ reported to Yoo Young-yoon. Except for Busan, the yellow sand in all other areas suddenly disappeared. Hearing this, Yoo Young-yoon finally breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that only someone like Jeong Il-du could have caused such a result. Jeong Il-du glanced at the Rakshasa gathered by the transfer. Realizing all the Rakshasa had assembled, his aura changed in an instant, and a surge of spatial power burst forth in a deep purple glow. Let's begin. With that, the Rakshasa all charged at once, forming a tight circle to surround him. But Jeong Il-du calmly extended a single finger, and with a flick, sliced a black rift through space. Then he spun his finger in a circle around his body, the spatial rift forming a ring of purple light, slicing through the heads of the Rakshasa at the gate. The next second, blood sprayed from the Rakshasa's heads en masse, the gruesome spectacle leaving the Jumjeong Mountain team speechless. In their entire lives, they'd never seen such terrifying power. Jeong Il-du made a point of leaving the magma Rakshasa alive. He crouched to check if it was still breathing, then called over the translation ability user. He grabbed the Rakshasa's head and asked, "Can you explain why Rakshasa have been appearing so frequently this past week?" The translator's answer was the same 4 words, "Bring him here." Jeong Il-du asked again, "Who is he?" but this time the Rakshasa clearly couldn't give a satisfying answer. The translator shrugged, dropping his ability, and said, "Either that's all they're saying or they're just repeating themselves." Jiang Ildu knew there'd be no more answers, so he simply disposed of the Magma Rakshasa as well. With all the Rakshasa taken care of, the gate was now the greatest threat. Just as before, Jiang Ildu placed his palm flat on the ground, with purple spatial energy pouring from his hand. This time, the rift wasn't a tiny one but a massive tear that engulfed the entire giant gate. In the next moment, the entire gate was swallowed up, leaving only lingering spatial scars on the ground. Such power made the team members sigh with relief. Thank goodness someone this strong is on humanity's side, not the Rakshasas. They'd heard he was over 50, but he didn't look it at all. Was it because of his spatial abilities? After clearing the alerts, Jiang Ildu returned to Seoul HQ. Since Yu Yongyun, the commander, hadn't been on the scene, she wanted to know how the gate had been handled. Jiang Ildu adjusted his tie, saying he'd stashed it in his own dark space for now, then slumped into a chair, complaining, "So tired." But Yu Yongyun just accused him of whining. "Aren't you always handling these things alone anyway?" With that, she used the remote to pull up the big screen. "This is the intel you wanted?" she asked, a little puzzled, why he suddenly wanted to see the new recruits' files. Jiang Ildu replied that he wanted to figure out who the Rakshasa were looking for, and why they were after him. That was the riddle troubling the entire organization for now. At the very same time in hell, countless Rakshasa were gathering. They raised their heads as if waiting for some leader to awaken. That leader was the massive queen slumbering before them. Compared to her, the Rakshasa looked as tiny as ants. As a thunderous rumble shook the air, the queen's eyes snapped open, revealing a pair of green eyes. Her first command upon waking was, "Bring him here." Meanwhile, despite all my talk about not becoming a special hire, I found myself at the entrance of the Ganghwa Island Yellow Sand Response Center. My mother had been so overjoyed she cried when she heard I'd landed a government job. I just couldn't bring myself to disappoint her. At the reception desk, the person greeting me was none other than Go Deokman, the team leader I'd met a few days ago. Judging by his drunken look, he still hadn't sobered up. But when he saw the new recruit was me, he rubbed his forehead, looking thoroughly annoyed as he motioned for me to follow. "Why did you have to end up on our team? We don't need cowards who run away at the last minute." Just then, another new recruit showed up, and his face immediately broke into a smile. "You're here too." This new recruit was Eden, the level 7 power user. He looked gloomy as he demanded, "Why wasn't I assigned to Seoul headquarters? Why did they stick me in the middle of nowhere on Ganghwa Island?" Go Deokman sneered, "Yeah, what's a big shot level 7 doing here? Must be something wrong with you, huh?" With that, he turned the doorknob and opened the door to the office. Inside, it looked just like any regular workplace. Nothing like what I'd imagined. Before Go Deokman opened the door, I'd thought the office would be totally brutal and wild, but it turned out I was worrying for nothing. Go Deokman then introduced us to the team members one by one. Versed himself, Go Deokman 41, team leader of Ganghwa Island. The short-haired woman sipping coffee was Yun Jiwon 36, Kim Ibag 51, and the bleached-hair punk Nam Yosak 25. After introductions, Go Deokman waved us off, telling us to learn the job on our own. But this was my first job ever, and the only one where I had no idea what to do. Naturally, I felt nervous. I glanced over at Eden, thinking it was probably his first day too. Maybe he was just as anxious as I was. Since we joined at the same time, I figured I should try to get along with him. So I reached out to shake his hand. Eden responded with a string of curses. I was stunned. Who would have thought my new coworker was such a lunatic? He just kept slumping at his desk, muttering about why someone like him was stuck on Ganghwa Island. It made me wonder if there was something wrong with the team. Were the rumors true? I asked Nam Yosak what kind of place the Ganghwa Island team was. Nam Yosak took off his headphones and launched into an explanation. First, there are 13 Yellow Sand Response headquarters nationwide. Each HQ oversees its own mountain teams. Powerful level 7 and above Rakshasa power users are usually assigned to headquarters for important missions. Places like Ganghwa Island with low population density only see weak Rakshasa, so the teams here are made up of weaker or problematic members. That explained why Eden kept complaining. But what kind of problems did the people here have? Before I could ask, Nam Yosak added that some strong power users actually chose to come here voluntarily. I was curious who that might be, but before I could follow up, the door banged open. Kang Chana walked in, hair still wet. Clearly, she was the one. I looked at her curiously, and she looked at me in disbelief. She hadn't expected the new guy to be someone as odd as me. Why odd? Because after the Bone Spike Rakshasa was defeated, I woke up with no memory of what had happened. As a power user, that was strange. Only regular people lose their memory when the yellow sand disappears. That's why Kang Chana found me suspicious. Just then Nam Yosak mentioned the life allowance, making my jaw drop. Wait, we get a life allowance in the future. Didn't that mean we'd be risking our lives fighting Rakshasa? Nam Yosak held up 5 fingers. The life allowance was 5 times our salary. My fear vanished in an instant, replaced by excitement. 5 times? That's a 7-figure salary. He waved me off, telling me to stop pestering him and just wait for a Rakshasa alert. I pouted, thinking I hadn't asked that many questions. Time passed, and soon it was the end of the workday. With new colleagues on the team, Yun Jiwon suggested we all go out for dinner. Meanwhile, in a secret lab at Seoul HQ, Yu Yong-yoon was reporting to Jeong Il-do that Rakshasa appearances had returned to normal. Jeong Il-do asked, any clue what caused their sudden rampage? Yu Yong-yoon said no, then asked, could it be a sign that day is near? Jeong Il-do stared for a long time at the feathered, limbed figure shackled in the tank, then said it wasn't certain yet, but told Yu Yong-yoon to warn all team leaders to keep their mouths shut about that day. Otherwise, if word got out to regular power users, it could cause chaos in the organization. Scene shift, the Gangwon Island team dinner. Go Deokmin wasted no time spilling the news about that day approaching. According to a Rakshasa prophet, within a year, Rakshasa will fall from the sky like rain. He made a shushing gesture, saying this was top secret and not to spread it. But the team members didn't seem to care at all. I found this ridiculous. If Rakshasa really rained down from the sky, wouldn't everyone die? Yet no one seemed fazed. Right then, a Rakshasa alert blared, shattering the relaxed mood. Kang Chana immediately got up to handle it. Eden took off his apron, wanting to go too, but Kang Chana shot him a look and refused, insisting that I go with her instead. In the car, I felt anxious about what the team leader had said about that day. Kang Chana noticed and told me not to worry about the prophecy, saying HQ already had contingency plans. After all, there were lots of powerful abilities at HQ. We just had to deal with the Rakshasa on Gangwon Island. And she said she'd never seen a gluttony-type power user like me before. I blushed at being complimented for the first time in my life. I was a gluttony Rakshasa power user. Was the first monster I met a gluttony Rakshasa. I asked Kang Chana what gluttony actually did. She smiled and said, as the name implied, it meant I could eat Rakshasa. Before long, we found the Rakshasa. This one was weak, and after a few moves, Kang Chana pinned it to a tree with her iron sword. She got excited and called me over, pointing at the Rakshasa's tentacle and telling me to eat it. I pointed at the Rakshasa, asking if she was serious. She waved her hand and said, any part of a Rakshasa you eat can't heal, and you also gain the opponent's ability. She was adamant I give it a try. Holding the Rakshasa's tentacle, my stomach churned. I tried to think of it as octopus and force myself to take a bite. But the nausea was overwhelming. Kang Chana grew frustrated and urged me to keep trying. I did my best, but the rotting tentacle made me gag uncontrollably. The mental torment was so bad, I felt sick at work the next day. To make things worse, Eden mocked me, saying I puked the moment I hit the field. How stupid could I be? He angrily complained, because of you I haven't been allowed on a single mission. Chief Kang only ever takes you to train. It made the hot-blooded Eden all the more resentful. Watching his angry back as he stormed off, I wanted to argue, but in truth, he kind of had a point. I really needed to pull myself together. But when the Rakshasa alert sounded again, Kang Chana immediately got up to call me into action, only to find my desk completely empty. At that moment, I was hiding in the bathroom, even though I'd told myself to pull it together. Just thinking about eating a Rakshasa while fully conscious made me so nauseous and dizzy I thought I might puke. I staggered out of the bathroom, telling myself to cut myself some slack today and try harder tomorrow. But I nearly jumped out of my skin when I bumped right into Chief Kang. She asked if I'd just been hiding in the bathroom. Clutching my stomach, I started rambling, saying I'd felt food poison since biting the Rakshasa yesterday. My stomach just wasn't right. Before I could spin another excuse, Kang Chana cut me off, saying maybe I just wasn't cut out for this job. Some people, even if they get Rakshasa powers, don't have to become special hires. All it takes is signing a confidentiality agreement and living under surveillance for the rest of your life. And someone as timid as me not only wouldn't last long, but more importantly, could get civilians killed. Finally, she told me seriously, if you can't handle this job, then please leave. We're already short-handed. Don't just take up space and do nothing. The scene shifted. I found myself by a lakeside. After hearing what Kang Chana said, I'd made up my mind to quit. Better to live under surveillance than get killed by a Rakshasa. I pulled out my phone to call my mom, ready to tell her I was quitting. After all, with countless Rakshasas set to appear within a year, work hardly mattered anymore. But as soon as the call connected, my mom said she was out hiking in Wang Mountain with her friends, complaining about the yellow sand everywhere. Then the call dropped. I'd clearly heard the words yellow sand, and a chill ran straight through me. I tore off toward Inwang Mountain like a madman. Every second I lost, my mother's chances of survival slipped away. Meanwhile, on Inwang Mountain, the entire team had been wiped out by a level 5 Rakshasa, leaving only a rookie and the newly arrived team leader. The leader had the power of a clone-type Rakshasa, and as she summoned her doppelganger, she urged the rookie to get to HQ and call for help. At the same time, I arrived at Inwang Mountain by taxi. Scanning the crowds being evacuated, I couldn't find my mom anywhere. So I begged a special officer for help, telling them my mom was still inside and to let me up the mountain. But I was refused. They said wild animals had been spotted and it was too dangerous. Without hesitation, I scrambled up the cliff. At the summit, I finally spotted my mom amid a swirl of yellow sand. She looked surprised. Why wasn't I at work and what was I doing here? I pulled out my phone and said I'd found her by tracking her social media. Then she asked again why I wasn't at work and what I was doing there. Swallowing my panic, I said work didn't matter anymore. But she seemed not to hear, just bragging to her friends about my government job, even bringing up my marriage prospects. Just as I was telling them to get out. That now was not the time for this. A few leaves rustled down from above. Looking up, I saw the Rakshasa crouched in the tree. Before I could react, it leapt down from the tree, heading straight for my mom. Desperate, I dove after it to try to stop the attack. But I wasn't as agile as the Rakshasa and tumbled head over heels down the cliff face. I realized I was too late to stop it. As the Rakshasa opened its bloody jaws ready to lunge at my mother, I screamed helplessly, praying for a miracle. And just then, several flashes of blades sliced through the air. A miracle! Blades pierced the Rakshasa's back and slammed it to the ground, saving my mother from disaster. Relieved that she was unharmed, I wondered where those blades had come from. But my mom had the answer. She pointed at the trembling Rakshasa and asked, "What is that monster?" Then she asked why ancient blades were floating above my head. Only then did I realize. This was the power of the bone spike Rakshasa that had almost killed me before. Suddenly my back throbbed and something began to push out. A bone blade broke through my skin. I tried moving the bone blades and found that sure enough they were now my power. At last I understood my gluttony ability. Not only do wounds I inflict on Rakshasa not heal, but when I eat them I gain their powers. Now I could use the bone spike Rakshasa's ability. Maybe I had a shot at taking this one down. Besides, the Rakshasa was still sprawled on the ground, clearly not very strong. Was this really the one that wiped out the entire Inwang Mountain team? But before I could think further, the mirror on the Rakshasa's forehead flashed, and its back erupted with dense rows of bone blades just like mine. As I reeled in shock, it suddenly attacked. Before I could dodge, countless bone blades stabbed into my body. But more than pain, I was consumed by one question: how could it use the same power as me? The Rakshasa drew closer step by step, and the mirror on its head flashed again, reflecting my own image. A theory formed in my mind. I snapped my fingers, and the Rakshasa copied me exactly. Its ability really was to mimic the powers of whoever it was fighting. Even knowing its power was mimicry, my mother's safety mattered most. She and her friend were just ordinary people. In the yellow sand, they couldn't heal if hurt. If the mirror Rakshasa used bone blades for an indiscriminate attack, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I hurried to shield my mom and told them both to find somewhere to hide. She asked, "But what about me?" I forced a smile. "Aren't I a public servant sworn to protect the people?" I lifted my shirt, showing her I couldn't be hurt, so she'd feel safe hiding. If she stayed, it'd only put me in more danger. With that, I charged at the mirror Rakshasa, grabbing hold of its body and tackling it off the cliff with me. I knew that just getting my mom to hide wasn't enough. The only way to keep her truly safe was to get the Rakshasa far away from her. Even if I died fighting, at least my mother would have a chance to live. But what mother wouldn't be heartbroken? She screamed my name, desperately trying to stop me, but it was too late. All I heard in that moment was the startled shriek of birds taking flight. Meanwhile, the rookie from the Inwang Mountain team finally saw backup arrive. It was the brothers Nambal and Nero who had rushed over from Seoul. Nambal asked him why he hadn't managed to capture the Rakshasa. The rookie, trembling, replied that thing was terrifying. The entire Inwang Mountain team was wiped out except for me. Nero stroked his chin in confusion and asked how a level 5 Rakshasa could wipe out a team that included a level 7 power user. What exactly was that Rakshasa's ability? A mirror. It's a mirror. It can mimic anyone's power. Having gotten the information they needed, Nero and Nambal followed the rookie's directions to the scene of the team's annihilation. But what they saw left them stunned. The mountain was swarming with countless mirror Rakshasas. Nambal, simple-minded as ever, still couldn't figure out why there were so many identical Rakshasas here. Nero, on the other hand, immediately filled in the blanks for his brother. The Inwang Mountain team leader's power is self-duplication. The mirror Rakshasa must have copied her. If we take out the original, the copies will disappear too. But just as Nero was trying to figure out which one was the real body, his reckless brother had already charged in, shouting, "Who cares, let's just kill them all." Nero looked at his brainless brother and felt a headache coming on. He'd already noticed that the real mirror Rakshasa wasn't among these copies. What he didn't know was that the true Rakshasa was fighting me at that very moment. the mirror Rakshasa opened its jaws and spewed out a stream of yellow sand. Within seconds, all its previous wounds were fully healed. Watching its terrifying regeneration, I realized I couldn't let it keep healing. I sent all my bone blades flying toward the Rakshasa, but to my shock, not a single one hit. Meanwhile, the mirror Rakshasa casually flicked a bone blade, and its shot went straight through my arm with perfect accuracy. The huge disparity infuriated me, and I sent another barrage of bone blades at it, yelling, "Damn it, there's no way I can keep missing." This time, sheer numbers let me land a hit, but even then, the wound closed almost instantly. It barely did any damage at all. I cursed to myself. We had the same powers, but our regeneration rates weren't even close. Still, in this unfair and one-sided fight, I believed I'd be the last one standing. After all, Kang Chana had told me I was the fastest healer among human power users. Though not quite up to Rakshasa speed, I shared one crucial trait with them. As long as my head stayed on, I couldn't die. So long as I didn't fear fighting Rakshasa, there was still hope. Besides, I still had one last trump card left. Just then, the Rakshasa began climbing up, giving me an opening. Gripping a bone blade in my left hand, I sent the rest flying at the Rakshasa with my right. As expected, none of them hit, but the next move was the real killing blow. I gripped my last bone blade with both hands, leapt, and aimed straight for the Rakshasa's head. If I couldn't shoot it, I'd stab it directly. But just as my lethal strike was about to land, the mirror Rakshasa caught it in its jaws, blocking me cold. At the same time, it seized my neck and lifted me off the ground. Then it leapt off the cliff, using me as a meat shield to smash into the earth. The combined force of the impact and its grip left me gasping for breath. I bit my lip trying to trigger my gluttony power, but I couldn't move a muscle, let alone bite into it. But then, the mirror on the Rakshasa's head flashed again, and it bit down on my neck before I could react. The pain was so intense I screamed, but I used the chance to draw a bone blade from my back and stabbed it deep into the Rakshasa's neck. As I got up, I couldn't understand why it had bitten me, when it could have just snapped my neck and finished me off. But before I could think, the world spun. The wound it had left on my neck wasn't healing, blood pouring out nonstop. It could even mimic my gluttony power. I stared at the blood spurting from me, wondering how long a person could last while bleeding out. There was no time. I had to finish it before I collapsed. Even if it killed me, I couldn't fail to protect a single person. I gripped my bone blade tighter. Even though I was barely able to stand, I charged the Rakshasa head-on. The mirror Rakshasa matched my moves perfectly, but there are some things a beast just can't imitate. The mirror Rakshasa stabbed its bone blade into my side, but I hurled my own blade upward, leaving it floating in the air. Then I wrapped my arms around the Rakshasa's waist, locking it in a bear hug, and unleashed the full power of the bone blade ability, calling every scattered blade back toward us. The sound of bone blades piercing flesh echoed in my ears, but even as they tore both our bodies apart, I refused to let go. The fatal blow hadn't landed yet, until the blade I'd thrown above us finally came crashing down, cleanly lopping off the Rakshasa's head. Only then did I let go. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. I'd survived. That was my first real victory over a Rakshasa. As the mirror Rakshasa died, all its copies began to fade as well. Nambal watched the vanishing Rakshasa in confusion. Are the clones disappearing? Does that mean we've already killed the real one? But his brother Nero shook his head. My foolish brother. The main body was killed by someone else. But who could it be? After killing the mirror Rakshasa, the gluttony effect on my neck wore off and my wounds healed completely. But just as I started to head back to find my mom, a voice whispered "eat" in my ear, stopping me in my tracks. A memory I didn't know I had surfaced in my mind. In it, my father was pointing ahead, repeating "eat, eat." I didn't know why he always told me to eat. What was I meant to devour? But the memory drew my eyes to the Rakshasa's body. If I ate its flesh, my gluttony power could absorb its ability. And now I knew firsthand how powerful this mimicry was. As I hesitated, Godiakman's warning echoed in my mind. Within a year, Rakshasa would rain down from the sky. When that day came, if I wanted to protect my mother, I'd have to eat every Rakshasa in my path. With that thought, I crouched down and devoured chunks of the Rakshasa's flesh. From now on, whenever I encountered a powerful Rakshasa, I'd have to eat it. Not just for myself, but for my mother and maybe for the whole world. After finding my mother, the very first thing I did was take her to the hospital. Just like the old lady before, my mother couldn't remember anything that happened during the yellow sand incident. This was a typical effect for ordinary people after the sand faded. To reassure her, I told her she'd fainted on the mountain, and even showed her a doctored government news report on my phone, telling her not to go hiking anymore. But my mother looked disappointed and explained she'd only gone to Inwang Mountain because someone there had seen a man who looked just like my father. It made sense. My father had disappeared on a mountain too. Could he have run into a Rakshasa? Just then, another lost memory flashed through my mind. I saw my childhood self staring blankly up at a tree, as if watching something. Suddenly, a drop of blood splattered onto my face, and my expression filled with terror. Up in the tree, a wolf-shaped creature covered in mouths was clutching a mangled man in its jaws. My heart thudded with panic. The sudden memory was exactly like last time on the mountain. But before I could dwell on it, my mother interrupted. She asked why I looked so pale. Was work stressing me out? I quickly assured her I was fine and had gotten used to it. After this experience, I decided to stay on as a special recruit. But when I returned to the Ganghwa Island office, the first thing that happened was a scolding from Chief Yun Jiwon, demanding to know where I'd disappeared to yesterday. Eden, as usual, mocked me, saying I'd probably run off scared. All I could do was apologize over and over. But to my surprise, Kang Chana suddenly stood up for me, saying she'd sent me home early because I looked unwell and had forgotten to report it. Yun Jiwon flicked her hair and snapped, "How could you forget something like that? Maybe we've spoiled you because you're so talented." Kang Chana replied that she didn't feel particularly favored. The tension in the room started to rise. Just then, another Rakshasa alert sounded. Kang Chana quickly put on her work uniform, saying she'd go deal with the level 2 Rakshasa and listen to Yun Jiwon complain later. I stood up too, saying I wanted to go as well. The abrupt change stunned the whole Ganghwa team. So Kang Chana took me and Nam Yosak up the mountain. On the way, I thanked Kang Chana for taking the blame for me. Kang Chana asked, "Didn't you run off because of what I said? Why did you come back?" I answered seriously that I was ready to fight Rakshasa now. Just then, a cloud of yellow sand swept over us, and the level 2 Rakshasa appeared. Even though it was weak, Kang Chana warned us to stay alert. Never underestimate anything just because it's low level. The Inwang Mountain team had been wiped out by a mere level 5. Nam Yosak added, "Good thing Seoul HQ came to take care of it. Otherwise, I can't imagine what would have happened. No wonder they call that place a monster den. Only power users above level 7 gather there. They're amazing." I was baffled. I'd clearly taken down that Rakshasa myself. Why were they getting the credit? I wanted to speak up for recognition, but after my early leave I kept quiet. But the level 2 Rakshasa in front of us was acting strange, constantly scratching its armpits. Seeing that, I stepped in front of Kang Chana and Nam Yosak. "You two stand back. Let me handle this." They stared at me in disbelief. Nam Yosak even said, "You're just a level 1. Can you really take on a level 2 Rakshasa?" I pointed my thumb at myself. "Leave it to me." Then I swept back my hair, revealing a mirror on my forehead. As it gleamed, I activated the Mirror Rakshasa's power. Since its ability was to copy opponents, I shoved both hands under my armpits, and like the Rakshasa before me, started furiously rubbing my armpits. Waves of stink poured out. The level 2 Rakshasa sniffed and frowned. It realized that stench wasn't its own, and never expected anyone would dare fight back with stink. It started flailing its arms, unleashing even more odor my way. The stink attack was as bad as I'd feared. Eye-watering, nose-burning, and with a gut-churning, shit-like undertone. But I couldn't lose. If I did, I'd be the joke of the team all over again. So I moved and swung my arms even faster, matching it stink for stink. In a battle of gods, mortals always suffer. Nam Yosak clamped both hands over his nose and mouth, trying to seal himself off from the air. He realized the Rakshasa's power was literally armpit stench, and it was as deadly as chemical weapons. Kang Chana was even worse off, swaying on her feet and about to pass out. Nam Yosak caught her and grumbled, "A level 7 power user and you can't handle a little smell." I glanced back mid-battle and saw the situation was dire. If this kept up, all three of us could be out for the count. I had to end this fast. I summoned the hand speed honed over 20 years of single life and unleashed an even fiercer volley of stench. At this point, it was less a fight than a magical duel. A primitive contest between two civilized people. No fists clashing, no blades ringing. This was pure hand speed and raw endurance for stink. In the end, my hand speed won out. A tsunami of foul air crashed over the Rakshasa, engulfing it completely. The battle ended with the armpit stench Rakshasa suffocating to death. I gulped down fresh air, then turned to declare I won. But no one looked happy. They just stared at me in misery. After finishing off the stench Rakshasa, the three of us went to the river to scrub off the smell. Kang Chana asked curiously if eating a Rakshasa with my gluttony power really let me absorb its abilities. Wiping my mouth, I confirmed it. The last Rakshasa I ate had a mimicry power, which is how I could use an ability like the armpit stench attack. Nam Yosak suddenly doubled over laughing, saying he couldn't believe I'd gone in so seriously, only to win by stinking the enemy to death. That was one weird ability. I blushed, embarrassed. Kang Chana put a hand on my shoulder, saying I'd done well. I'd really grown up compared to before. She told me to rest while she and Nam Yosak checked if the yellow sand sensor's alarm had cleared. Watching them leave, I sat down feeling dejected. This could have been my moment to impress everyone, but I'd had to face such a bizarre Rakshasa. Instead of earning respect, I'd just embarrassed myself even more. As I sulked, a shadow blocked out the sun, covering my whole body. I turned, expecting Nam Yosak and Kang Chana, but to my shock, it was Jiang Ildu, the strongest power user alive. He leaned down and asked, "You're the level 1 who killed Inwang Mountain's level 5 Rakshasa, right?" I nodded and asked how he knew. He reached out and said he wanted to recruit me to Seoul headquarters, and asked if I knew what kind of place it was. I was flattered and took a step back, saying I'd heard it was where the best power users gathered, but why would they want a level 1 like me? Jiang Ildu smiled wickedly and said he could see a person's potential, but he admitted that suddenly pulling me from the Ganghwa team to HQ would be disrespectful to Go Diokman and the others. So I told him I still needed time to think about it. Jiang Ildu then returned to headquarters, with Yu Yongyun hurrying after him, asking where he'd been that was important enough to delay a meeting. Jiang Ildu replied that there was someone who had really caught his attention. Yu Yongyun asked, a bit puzzled, "Is it your son?" "I remember his name is Eden, right?" But Jiang Ildu said no. "Ever since I divorced Eden's mother, I haven't seen him. It's not my son I'm interested in. It's that new recruit." Yu Yongyun followed up. "You still think the abnormal Rakshasa incident was related to some new hire?" Jiang Ildu answered with certainty that his gut told him it was. Meanwhile, back at the Ganghwa Island Response Center, I was over the moon. Not only had I been recognized by the strongest person out there, but I now had the chance to transfer to Seoul HQ anytime I wanted. But just as I was basking in happiness, I felt Eden's brooding gaze on me again. He snapped, asking why I was always grinning, saying it was seriously bad luck. He added that a useless level 1 like me probably just liked hiding in the office out of fear. This time I didn't take it lying down and shot back, "Who are you calling useless? Isn't it because you're not strong enough that you didn't get into Seoul HQ?" Eden exploded with rage and got to his feet. I thought he was about to hit me, but instead he sneered, "You're just that guy who can only use armpit stench powers." My face turned bright red. How did he know? The culprit, of course, was Nam Yosak, who was in the middle of reenacting my battle with the armpit stench Rakshasa for the whole office, sending everyone into fits of laughter. At that moment, Chief Yun Jiwon appeared beside me and loudly told everyone to stop laughing, saying I'd done a great job. But just as I was feeling touched, her next words hit even harder. "You used to just hide in the bathroom, and now you can solo a Rakshasa. That's real progress." I was crushed. That was even more embarrassing than what everyone else had said. And seeing Kang Chana's totally indifferent reaction, I felt like that was its own kind of silent mockery. It made me care even more, and I felt like I was already branded as a loser here. Just as I was about to call Jiang Ildu and head for a new future at HQ, the level 2 Rakshasa alarm sounded again. Kang Chana, as usual, was first to her feet, saying she'd handle it. But this time, Eden grabbed her arm and insisted he go instead. He was bored to death just sitting around. He tilted his chin at me and said I had to come along too, so I could see how a level 7 handled a Rakshasa. Even though I'd rather spend 0 seconds with this maniac, I had no choice but to go since it was a mission. But when we got to the scene, things turned ugly. The yellow sand was coming from inside a house, which meant the Rakshasa was hiding there. When we opened the door, we found the sand inside was even thicker than outside. This was definitely not a level 2 situation. It had to be level 4 or higher. Unlike Eden, who showed no fear, I was cautious. There were too many empty rooms, and a Rakshasa could ambush us from anywhere. As we reached a door with yellow sand pouring out from the cracks, Eden said it had to be inside that room. He tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Locked from the inside, he guessed. I quickly moved in front of him. "Wait, don't open it yet. We have no idea what level Rakshasa is inside. If it's high level, we're finished." Eden just shoved me aside and told me not to get in the way. Since the door wouldn't open, he said he'd just smash it down. He cracked his fingers and activated his power. For a second, I expected the door to shatter and braced myself. But nothing happened, not even a scratch. Eden was baffled. "That's not right." He peered through the keyhole and saw Rakshasa inside. Strangely, in an empty room, the Rakshasa was crouched in the corner, almost as if it was scared. I peered through the keyhole too. I couldn't understand why this Rakshasa had locked itself in the room. Maybe it wasn't that strong, but Eden cursed me for being an idiot, saying the sand inside was level 7 or higher. This was a dangerous one. My heart skipped a beat. Wasn't Ganghwa Island supposed to only get weak Rakshasa? Why was a level 7 showing up here? But Eden said this was the first time he'd felt genuinely excited since arriving. He was finally facing something tough. Looking at his crazed expression, I realized he was totally nuts. Even working together, we might not survive. We needed to get out and alert HQ. I tried the front door to leave, but it wouldn't open either. I rammed it with my body. Still nothing. Just like the door the Rakshasa was hiding behind, it was sealed tight. I began to suspect this was the Rakshasa's ability. Eden started pounding on the door, shouting for the shut-in Rakshasa to come fight. He broke 10 fingers using his power 10 times, but the door didn't even crack. I tried to smash open other exits, but every window and wall had become rock solid. Nothing would break. I was now certain. This shut-in Rakshas's power was trapping us inside. We couldn't attack or escape. My only hope was that the Ganghwa team would come rescue us. Meanwhile, at the Ganghwa Response Center, Godiakman suddenly slammed the table. Big trouble. But the big trouble wasn't that Eden and I hadn't returned. It was that he'd forgotten about the group training down in Busan. Immediately, all the team members scrambled to put together documents, gathered them onto a USB, and tossed it to Godiakman, telling him to get to Busan for the training ASAP. With that done, everyone figured they could finally relax. But then Nam Yosak realized Eden and I had been gone for 3 hours. Chief Yun Jiwon, who'd just been enjoying her coffee, went pale. I knew we shouldn't have let 2 rookies go together. She told Nam Yosak to come with her to check things out, and told Kim Ibak and Kang Chana to stay on standby. But Kang Chana, sensing something was wrong, got up and started getting dressed to head out as well. Yun Jiwon leaned in and quietly asked her, "The scene is near that place. Are you sure you'll be okay?" Kang Chana slung her coat over her shoulder and led the way. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. Let's go." Soon after, they arrived at the scene. Just as they were wondering where we were, Nam Yosak spotted 2 blurry figures running toward them from the far end of the hall. At that moment, Eden and I were sprinting toward them, shouting, "Don't close the door." But we were still a step too late. The main door had already closed. Seeing this, both Eden and I felt a wave of despair. Yun Jiwon looked at our dejected faces and asked what had happened. I told them everything that had occurred. After hearing it all, Kang Chana told us to stand back. She wanted to try something herself. She began to harden her arm into iron. Within seconds, she had formed an iron blade. Kang Chana put all her strength into a single slash at the door. But the door remained completely unscathed. Then Yun Jiwon rolled up her sleeves to give it a try. Her ability was that of a spider Rakshasa. She figured she could use her small spider form to slip through the keyhole and get inside. But even so, the keyhole was too small and the spider couldn't get through. With everyone having shown off their abilities, Eden turned to Nam Yosak, telling him to stop standing around and see if his power could help. Nam Yosak replied that his ability wasn't for attack. At this point, except for team leader Go Deokman and Chief Kim Ibak, all the other team members were present. But with the team leader off at group training and not back until tomorrow, only Chief Kim Ibak could come to our rescue. Just then, a sudden figure startled us all. To our surprise, it was Chief Kim Ibak himself. He said he'd come to check on us since we hadn't returned. We explained everything again for Kim Ibak. After listening, Kim Ibak crouched down and peered through the keyhole. As Yun Jiwon asked how it looked, and if he had any ideas, Chief Kim Ibak simply laid down flat on the ground. His bizarre behavior left us all stunned for 3 seconds. I asked Yun Jiwon what kind of move that was. He looked like he'd just fallen asleep on the floor. Yun Jiwon shrugged and said she didn't know. Kim Ibak mainly handled paperwork, and she'd never seen his ability in action before. While everyone was at a loss, Nam Yosak suddenly pointed out the real issue. Shouldn't we find it strange that the Rakshasa refused to come out? How did it plan to kill us? At that moment, the whole house suddenly began to shake violently. Kang Chana rushed out, saying the sound was coming from the back room. When everyone arrived, the sight before us was shocking. The inner room was shrinking rapidly. Eden shouted that he understood the shut-in Rakshasa's goal now. It intended to make the entire house disappear except for its own space, killing us all. Just then, the shut-in Rakshasa inside the room began to split apart. With the back room getting smaller and smaller, Kang Chana bit her finger and condensed an iron blade, charging forward. She wedged the blade into the seam of the shrinking wall, trying to stop the room from collapsing further. But soon, cracks began to form in the iron blade. Kang Chana bit her finger even harder, letting her blood reinforce the blade's body. Letting the flowing blood strengthen the blade. But this was extremely risky. If the blade snapped, the flying fragment could decapitate her on the spot. And with the room still shrinking, if she didn't let go and escape, she'd be crushed to death. As Yun Jiwon screamed for Kang Chana to stop, I rushed forward and pulled her away just in time. With a sharp snap, the iron blade broke in two, and Kang Chana's eyes filled with despair, tears quietly leaking out as she stared at the shrinking wall. As the room was about to disappear completely, I grabbed Kang Chana and dragged her to safety. The shaking stopped as the room finished shrinking, and Kang Chana, having lost too much blood, passed out. Confused, I asked Yun Jiwon why Kang Chana had gone so far. Yun Jiwon explained that this was actually Kang Chana's grandmother's house. It was here she lost her grandmother and younger brother, survived alone, and gained her powers. 4 years ago, she'd lived in a happy family. The reason she'd risked it all was because inside that room was a mural her little brother had drawn of their family of 3. I felt ashamed, not realizing what she'd been through. But right now, our top priority was escaping. There was no telling if the next shrink would erase the entire house. We had to act before the walls moved again. The tiny cracks on the wall became our hope. We started slicing at the cracks with small knives, trying to widen them. All night long we took turns, each of us exhausted, even the newly awakened Kang Chana joining in. I scratched my head and told Kang Chana I'd heard this was her grandmother's house, and even though no one lived here, it was always so clean. It must be she who came back to tidy up. But Kang Chana said she was waiting for the Rakshasa that killed her family. I asked how she knew that Rakshasa would return. Because that Rakshasa is different from the others. In my memory, it wasn't just the Iron Blade Rakshasa that appeared in my house back then. There was another Rakshasa, almost human. He seemed to have a purpose and intelligence, not like the others who just want to kill. And when the Rakshasa flood the world in a year, that one will definitely show up again. That's why I've stayed on Ganghwa Island. Just then, the house began to shake and shrink again. We had no choice but to move into the hallway. By dawn, the house had shrunk by a third. A whole night of struggle left us completely exhausted. Just when I thought I could finally get some rest, the house started shaking again. I looked over at Chief Kim, who was still fast asleep, and tried to wake him up so he could hide with us. But suddenly, Chief Kim stood up, and one side of his face was covered in clusters of mold. He said he thought it was about time. Right after he spoke, the tightly shut door swung open, and the shut-in Rakshasa, its head covered in mold, ran out in agony. The shocking sight made us all bombard Kim Ibak with questions. What ability had he used to make a shut-in Rakshasa run out on its own? It turned out his Rakshasa ability was mold, also known as the chronic killer. It just took a long time to work, so after he slipped some mold in through the crack, he simply went asleep. All our disappointment vanished as we showered praise on his ability. But just then, Eden shouted for us to knock it off. Things were going south, because it wasn't just one shut-in Rakshasa anymore. A whole horde of them was pouring out of the room. I was terrified. I'd only seen one Rakshasa through the keyhole. How did so many suddenly appear? And these were all genuine level 7 Rakshasa. How were we supposed to fight them off? While I was thinking, the shut-in army was already upon us. Kang Chana instantly activated her power, forging an iron blade, and told Nam Yosak to use his ability to hide the team. Nam Yosak's Rakshasa power was no presence. Within his field, any living thing could become completely undetectable, making us invisible. With that, Kang Chana charged forward, iron blade in hand. Just one strike and she took out the first Rakshasa. We all thought she'd be able to tear through them, but the cramped hallway restrained her movements. After killing the first shut-in Rakshasa, her blade got stuck in the wall and wouldn't budge. And since the blade was fused to her arm, she couldn't move at all now. As another shut-in Rakshasa ran along the blade right at her, I bolted out of the no-presence field and bit into the Rakshasa, freeing Kang Chana from danger and killed it with my gluttony power. I noticed that though these shut-ins were level 7, their attack and defense didn't match up at all. Their only tactics seemed to be rushing at us and biting. None of them were using any abilities. But before I could think deeper, Nam Yosak shouted in terror that the ceiling was coming down. The shut-in Rakshasa were shrinking the hallway to crush us. I quickly swallowed a chunk of Rakshasa flesh, ready to use the shut-in's power, but the mirror Rakshasa ability still came up instead. I'd always thought that each new Rakshasa ability I ate replaced the last, but the mirror power hadn't been overwritten. No time to analyze it, I used the mirror to copy the shut-in Rakshasa's ability, gaining the power to control the size of enclosed spaces at will. As the shut-in Rakshasa tried to compress the space, I forced it to expand. The two forces balanced each other out, but this also meant I couldn't move. That left me open as the rest of the Rakshasa lunged at me. But as soon as they got close, their heads spun 180 degrees and snapped, breaking their own necks. Eden cursed me for being an idiot, saying I should have used the mirror ability from inside Nam Yosak's no-presence shield. But I warned him to watch his back, because several Rakshasa had already latched onto him, biting his arm so he couldn't use his snapping power. At that moment, a gigantic spider suddenly appeared, its sharp claws skewering the Rakshasa in an instant. Who knew Yun Jiwon's little spider was actually a monstrous beast? As the team's support and strategist, Nam Yosak immediately ordered Eden to help Kang Chana. They'd focus on fighting, while he and Yun Jiwon would guard me and keep the space from collapsing. With their backs covered, the two level 7s went all out, mowing down Rakshasa after Rakshasa. But the numbers never seemed to dwindle. Then Yun Jiwon, using her spider's senses, found the source. The shut-in Rakshasa were pouring out of the original room. That confirmed my suspicion. The shut-in had not just one ability, but a second one that could make clones. The sheer number of these Rakshasa made it clear they weren't true level 7s. So I abandoned the power struggle, dashed out of the no-presence zone, and yelled to Eden and Kang Chana, "Clear me a path." They understood instantly, fighting their way to the main door. I seized my chance, leaping inside the room. As expected, the place was packed wall-to-wall with Rakshasa. The real shut-in Rakshasa was crouched in the corner, endlessly splitting off clones. He used a red thread on his back to control the clones sent out to fight, while he hid safely inside. A surge of anger rose in me. If you like hiding in your room so much, then stay here forever. With that, I used the mirror Rakshasa's copied shut-in power to make the room start collapsing, crushing him for good. But I had to escape before the room caved in completely. With the ceiling dropping and the exit shrinking, I ran as fast as I could, not sure if I'd make it. Luckily, Eden and Kang Chana had finished off the clones outside and reached me in time, extending a hand. At the last moment, I grabbed Eden's arm, and he hauled me out just as the room collapsed with a thunderous crash, vanishing into a wall. Just like that, the shut-in Rakshasa was finally defeated. We all celebrated, giddy with relief and victory. This time I was finally recognized. Everyone kept praising my mirror ability. That was awesome. Totally different from when you fought the armpit Rakshasa. But while we were cheering, Kang Chana stared at the vanished room, lost in grief. That room held her most precious memories. Seeing her sorrowful silhouette, I felt a pang in my chest. I had to do something, but the shut-in Rakshasa was dead. I couldn't use the mirror to copy anymore. The only option was to devour the shut-in's flesh, let its power overwrite the mirrors, and use the shut-in ability to restore the room before the yellow sand faded completely. So I grabbed the Rakshasa's arm and took a bite. Nam Yosak recoiled in shock, asking what I was doing. I ignored him and used the shut-in ability as the sand lingered, slowly restoring the room piece by piece. Everyone watched in astonishment. Is this guy really just level 1? As the room neared full restoration, the yellow sand started to run out. Just as I was about to push myself further, Kang Chana grabbed my arm and said, "That's enough." Her eyes at that moment were as radiant as a rainbow after the rain. Meanwhile, Go Diakman returned from the Busan training, clutching bread, only to find the office completely empty. He'd gone all the way to Busan to bring everyone some bread, but now had no idea where we'd gone. He searched every room, but there wasn't a soul in sight. Just then, Director Jiang called. Go Diakman answered, asking what was up. Jiang Ildu said he'd tried to recruit me to HQ but was turned down, and asked if Go Diakman knew why. Go Diakman gave an awkward laugh. Maybe that guy's just gotten used to life with our Ganghwa Island team. And right then, after a day of chaos, the rest of us were fast asleep, dead to the world. Even by the time I got to work the next day, I still hadn't recovered. The exhaustion from fighting the shut-in Rakshasa left me feeling soulless, and honestly, I found going to work more annoying than ever. Just then, a car horn blared. A white luxury car suddenly pulled up beside me, and sitting inside was Eden. After going through life and death together yesterday, I figured we could call each other battle comrades by now. So I smiled and waved, saying that since we were headed the same way, he might as well give me a lift. But Eden just gave me a disgusted look and said, "Get lost," then sped off. It made me wonder if he was just showing off. Nam Yosak suddenly appeared behind me, saying he envied Eden's imported car. Then he asked if it was a bit much for a new government worker to drive a foreign luxury car to work. I agreed with Nam Yosak, saying, "And his personality is the worst." Nam Yosak chimed in, "No matter how rich, good-looking, or impressive his resume is, if he's got a bad attitude, what's the point? He'll never have any friends." We both burst out laughing in unison, but somehow I felt a strange sense of defeat. After all, Eden and I only had one thing in common. Neither of us had friends. I even felt a little envious of him. When I finally made it to the office, I was greeted by a beaming team leader, Go Diakman. It was nothing like how he'd looked when I first joined. He was laughing and said, "Welcome, our level 7 ability user, Mr. Maru." I pressed a hand to his forehead and said, "What do you mean, level 7? Yunjiwan walked by with a stack of files and said that since I'd eaten a level 7 Rakshasa with my gluttony power, I was now a level 7 user myself. She even congratulated me. Next thing I knew, Go Diakman clapped me hard on the back, saying he'd thought I was hopeless, but my gluttony power was top tier after all. Nam Yosak looked at me with starry eyes, saying I was the only one whose ability could keep growing stronger and how amazing that was. For a moment, I felt happier than I ever had before. This was the first time, aside from my gentle mother, that I'd ever been recognized by so many people. But just as everyone was enjoying the moment, Eden slammed his hand on the table in frustration. He glared and said, "Enough with the chatter. Does nobody have work to do?" I looked at Eden's gloomy eyes, completely confused. I hadn't even said much. Why was he always staring at me? Before, he ignored me for being level 1, and now that my rank was higher, he still wasn't happy. Was this what envy and resentment looked like? Just then, a slender hand landed on my shoulder. Kang Chana, fresh from the shower and towel drying her hair, walked over and said she wanted to talk to me outside. We sat down on a bench outside. I nervously asked what she wanted to talk about. She said she wanted to thank me for what I did at her grandmother's house. I replied, "Aren't we on the same team? It's what teammates do. No need to thank me." But then she suddenly leaned in close, her face near mine, and said she'd always thought a certain way about me. My heart immediately started pounding, my cheeks flushing red. What did she mean? Was this a confession? Should I accept or refuse? So I asked what she thought about me. She replied seriously, saying she didn't believe I was a level 1 ability user. That answer caught me totally off guard. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting. But I still asked what she meant by that. She said, with your regeneration and your power to eat other Rakshasa, there's no way you're only level 1. I touched my chin and thought about it. So the level 1 Rakshasa I met that day wasn't a gluttony Rakshasa. Kang Chana told me to think carefully. Had I ever encountered any other Rakshasa before joining the special team? But no matter how hard I thought, that just seemed impossible. How could I forget something so important? Just then I saw a cloud of black smoke rise up behind Kang Chana. And inside the smoke, something seemed to be trying to come out. My heart started pounding wildly. It was the monster that had suddenly appeared in my memories before, now showing up right here. Suddenly, my old panic attacks came rushing back. Damn it, am I hallucinating again? Is my panic disorder coming back? Kang Chana saw the pain on my face and anxiously asked what was wrong. I grabbed my hair and told her it was nothing, just that sometimes I remembered scary things. She took my hand and said, "Don't be afraid. I'm here with you. You're safe." The moment she said that, my panic vanished, replaced by an even deeper blush. She looked at me, certain that something must have happened in my past. At that moment, Go Deokman, dressed in a red shirt, suddenly appeared and asked if we were having a romantic moment. I frantically waved my hands to explain, but Kang Chana calmly stood up and said no, then added, "If Rakshasa flood in over the next year, we're all dead anyway. Who has time for romance? I'm not interested at all." Her cold words stabbed right through me. That was harsh. Was she not interested in me or in love itself? As I watched Kang Chana walk away, Go Deokman nudged me with interest, saying, "Kid, looks like you just got dumped." Even though it wasn't what he thought, seeing Kang Chana's retreating figure, I still felt a little hurt. Time flew by, and before I knew it, there was only an hour left in the workday. Yun Jiwon told everyone except those on duty to go check the yellow sand alarms. I was paired with Kang Chana to inspect our assigned area. Kang Chana was recording the frequency of yellow sand detection, while I was still thinking about our earlier conversation. If what Chief Kang said was true, that everyone's going to die, then there's really no point thinking about anything else. I should be focusing on how to survive against the Rakshasa. But since we have so few clues about them, I thought, if only we could talk to one. Just then, a phone rang out across the mountain. It was the emergency phone, only used when backup was urgently needed. On the other end, Nam Yosak's voice was weak and injured, saying a Rakshasa had appeared in Zone 3 and both he and Chief Go were hurt. The Rakshasa was headed our way, and he warned us to be careful of what the Rakshasa said. Hearing this, Kang Chana's face was full of shock. How is that possible? Chief Go is a level 10 user. How could even he get hurt? I was stunned too. What? That laid-back uncle is a level 10. But before I could process it, yellow sand began to swirl around us. The Rakshasa had arrived. Kang Chana warned me to be careful. This was someone even a level 10 couldn't handle. Through the sand, a shadow like a sniper's scope slowly appeared. It was a Rakshasa with a huge hole in its head. And the first thing it did when it saw us was greet us in a human voice. "Hello there." When we didn't answer, it asked again, "Nice to meet you. Can we talk?" I didn't understand how it could speak like a human. Weren't Rakshasa only supposed to mimic sounds, not use language? Kang Chana said this was probably a language Rakshasa. It was her first time seeing a Rakshasa that could actually converse. The language Rakshasa, seeing us still wary, held out its hand and said not to be hostile. It wasn't here to fight. Just wanted to chat. I asked what it wanted to talk about. Kang Chana immediately told me not to speak to it. Nam Yosak had already warned us about that. But I thought this was a rare chance to learn about Rakshasa. They come to kill us, but we know nothing about them. So I ignored Kang Chana's protest and asked the Rakshasa where they came from. The language Rakshasa looked delighted. Someone finally responded and said it was from the abyss. I asked what the abyss was. It grinned and said, "The abyss is the deepest part of hell. Those who committed the greatest sins in life are trapped there, forced to fight endlessly in darkness." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, my heart pounding. Were all Rakshasa once human? Before I could finish the thought, the language Rakshasa seemed to read my mind and said, "You're right. Rakshasa were once people." Kang Chana and my eyes widened in utter disbelief. How could this be? If Rakshasa used to be human, then what have I been eating all this time? Just imagining it made me retch. Then the Rakshasa pointed at us and said, "Now it's my turn to ask questions." But before I could guess what it would ask, Kang Chana grabbed my arm and told me to stop talking to it. She slashed her palm with a knife, saying that no matter how friendly it acted, it was the one who'd attacked Chief Go and Nam Yosak. She had no interest in chatting with a Rakshasa like that. Even as she spoke, a spear had already formed in her hand. Seeing this, the language Rakshasa raised its hands and said, "Stop, I don't like violence." But Kanchana didn't care, charging forward with her spear. Just as the spear was about to pierce the Rakshasa's neck, a voice erupted from its throat. "Even if you kill me, you can't avenge your brother." In a flash, Kanchana froze as if bewitched. The Rakshasa brushed the spear aside and said, "Because your brother died because of you." For a moment, time seemed to stop in Kanchana's world, dragging her back to that tragic night. Her brother, chest pierced by an iron sword. The iron Rakshasa's attack was meant for her, but her brother shielded her. With pain in his eyes, his last words were, "Sis, run." As the sword withdrew, it dealt a second fatal blow. Kanchana cradled his body, wailing in agony. Back in the present, blood trickled from her lips and she collapsed to her knees. The Rakshasa continued, "He died to protect you. As his sister, shouldn't you have protected him? You're the killer, the one who took your brother's life." Seeing Kanchana suddenly collapse, I shouted, "Chief Kang," and rushed forward to catch her. But the wound on her chest shocked me. I hadn't seen the Rakshasa attack. How was she hurt? Was its attack some kind of language-based psychic assault, leaving real wounds on the heart? Before I could think further, the Rakshasa stepped closer and said, "All right, let's keep talking. Forget about the one mourning for her dead family." I yelled at it to shut its filthy mouth. How could I talk to a Rakshasa who toys with other people's pain? Furious, I slammed my fist into the Rakshasa's face. Before it could react, its body crashed to the ground. I leapt after it, ready to punch again. "I don't care if you were human or demon, there's no forgiving you." But just as my fist was about to land, the Rakshasa said, "Why are you angry for her? Didn't that woman already dump you?" And my whole body froze. Suddenly, I couldn't move. At the same time, somewhere out of sight, a thin thread shot out and a wound exploded in my chest, as if my heart had been pierced. But this wasn't heartache. Why was it causing real damage? I looked at Kanchana on the ground. I never thought of her as a romantic interest. She was just a strong and admirable senior. She still lay there, lost in memory, muttering, "Sis, I'm sorry." I clutched my chest, wondering how this language attack could linger so long. Meanwhile, the language Rakshasa picked up a stone, its verbal assault continuing. Feelings really do make people fragile. I never experienced them, even when I was human. It hefted the stone and approached step by step, while I still couldn't move. Suddenly, it leaned down and shouted at me, "Why aren't you saying anything? Can't even speak now." That's when I realized, anyone with feelings can't withstand this heart wound attack. That's why even a level 10 like Chief Go was hurt. Unless someone completely cold and immune to heartbreak showed up to save us, both Kanchana and I were done for. Just as the language Rakshasa was about to bring the stone crashing down on me, its entire body suddenly began to twist and snap with a harsh crack. It was Eden, arriving right on time. He asked why I was kneeling on the ground if I was supposed to be so strong. Seeing Eden, I couldn't help but grin with relief. Finally, the maniac had shown up. But Eden just grabbed me by the collar and shouted, "What the hell are you smiling about?" Right then, the language Rakshasa's voice rang out again. Hey, 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 your attack kind of tickles." Eden hadn't expected the Rakshasa to survive that level of attack. The language Rakshasa cheerfully straightened its head and said its vocal cords were incredibly tough. This kind of attack wasn't enough to break them. It mocked us, "You rookies will have to try harder." Hearing this, both Eden and I felt a surge of fury. I still warned Eden to be careful. The Rakshasa could read human memories and attack your most vulnerable spot. But Eden told me to shut up, saying he didn't need a rookie's warning and I should just sit back and watch. I thought to myself, this guy really is a freak. His attitude is as bad as the Rakshasa's. Eden rolled his shoulders, then snapped his fingers to activate his Rakshasa power. With the sound of breaking fingers, he landed a blow that severely damaged the Rakshasa's leg. But at that moment, the language Rakshasa read Eden's memories and instantly launched a verbal assault, saying his attacks were mediocre and no wonder he could never earn his famous father's approval. Eden showed no reaction, just kept snapping his fingers and activating his power, making the Rakshasa's bones crack all over. Seeing its language attacks having no effect, the Rakshasa amped up its assault. "Turns out you're just like me. Incapable of feeling. No wonder the child of a woman who went mad and killed herself after being abandoned by her husband would end up this way." Eden's face darkened and he lowered his head. I was shocked. So Eden's past was that tragic. I'd always thought he was just a spoiled rich kid. Even if he was a freak, being attacked like that must have pushed him to his limit. Just as I was about to intervene, Eden, who looked devastated just a moment ago, suddenly burst out laughing. "So what?" And with that, he lunged forward and grabbed the Rakshasa by the neck. "How is that my fault? If you want to blame someone, blame my mother for being too weak. Only the strong survive." Seeing even this didn't work, the language Rakshasa mocked him with a final killer blow. "So you won't make it either because you're even weaker than Maru." For a split second, Eden froze. Even his mother's death hadn't fazed him, but being told he was weaker than me left him speechless. At the same time, the language Rakshasa fired a sword-light straight at Eden's heart, but I managed to block it with my arm just in time. I'd finally figured out its attack pattern. First, it used emotional wounds to break you, then followed up with a snake blade from its mouth to pierce your heart. Just then Kanchana, now recovered, darted over and sliced through the Rakshasa's snake blade. The language Rakshasa screeched in agony. Its snake blade was its weak spot. No wonder Eden's attacks on its body hadn't worked. Kanchana turned to ask if we were all right. Seeing her so cool and decisive, I felt my cheeks flush and my breath quicken. But I shook my head to clear it. Right now, waking Eden was more important. I shook him again and again, but nothing worked. He just kept muttering. He said, "I'm weaker than you." I scratched my nose, surprised by how jealous he was. I started stomping on him. "Snap out of it. Don't let that jerk get to you." "Yeah, I'm great, but you're even better than me." At my words, Eden's body shuddered, then he flashed a confident smile. "Of course I am." Because the Rakshasa's snake blade had been severed, it couldn't speak for now and could only flail the blade to keep us at bay. I knew that if we didn't finish it off soon, things would only get worse for us at night. But its blade kept us from getting close. Kanchana said to leave this problem to her. While the Rakshasa couldn't talk, now was our best chance. But Eden stopped her, asking if she really planned to fight in her current condition. That's when Kanchana realized her wound from the language Rakshasa still hadn't healed. I realized it too. So long as the Rakshasa lived, its emotional wounds would linger and wouldn't heal. With one person injured and another whose powers couldn't hurt the Rakshasa, I knew I had to do something. So I took off running into the forest, making ridiculous, taunting gestures to lure the language Rakshasa after me. When the Rakshasa followed, I shouted back to Eden, "Chief Kang's in your hands. I'll take care of this one." Eden cursed me for an idiot, saying my current power only worked in enclosed spaces. But Kanchana told Eden to forget about her and hurry up to help me. Meanwhile, I led the language Rakshasa into a patch of woods. As I ran, I searched desperately for any enclosed space nearby, but found nothing but trees. No buildings in sight. Just when I was wondering what to do, a white car screeched to a halt on the road below me. Eden opened the door and yelled for me to get in. I vaulted the guardrail and jumped down, thinking Eden really was something else. A young rich guy who didn't hold back, so enviable. I dove into the car and stuck out my hand to taunt the Rakshasa again. "Come on then." Sure enough, the language Rakshasa couldn't resist and climbed into the car after me. Eden slammed the door from the outside, shouting, "Locked." Taking the cue, I slipped out the opposite door. But as I shut the door, the language Rakshasa's snake blade shot out, slicing me, head and all, into bloody pieces. But when the language Rakshasa thought it had finished me and opened the car door, a hand grabbed its neck from behind. It spun around, shocked to see I was not only alive, but several identical copies of me had appeared inside the car. Turned out the one it sliced up was just a clone. My real body was still in the car, using the shut-in power to create more clones. My clones dragged it into the car and began to tear into it with their teeth. Outside, Eden saw that the plan had worked, but I still hadn't come out, so he kept banging on the car window, asking how long I planned to stay in there. Suddenly, as if something occurred to him, his pupils dilated in shock. "Don't tell me that guy never planned to come out in the first place." Just then Kanchana, clutching her wound, arrived and asked Eden where I was. Inside the car, the language Rakshasa, mauled by my clones, tried to turn the tide with another language attack. He said we could have just talked it out. There was no need for violence. Or are you just violent by nature, just like your father? Hearing this, my eyes went wide as a long-buried memory suddenly surged up. I saw my childhood self being yanked into the air by my father, his hand gripping my collar as he kept repeating, "Fight, fight." The Rakshasa's voice continued to echo. "When that violent father disappeared, you must have been so happy." To block out his attack, I slapped both hands over my ears, beating on them until my eardrums burst and blood streamed down. "Enough. Stop toying with people's feelings." The language Rakshasa grinned, thinking his words had worked, and was about to deliver another attack when I clamped my hand over his mouth and had my clones pinned down his entire body. With a squeeze of my palm, I activated the shut-in Rakshasa's ability. The white car's chassis began to compress rapidly, shrinking before our eyes. Kanchana screamed for me to stop, but Eden held her back, shouting, "He's throwing his life away. Do you want to as well?" With a thunderous crunch, the white car was crushed into a lump, blood bursting out like fireworks. Both of them stood in stunned silence, faces ashen. At the same time, the yellow sand around us began to fade, meaning the language Rakshasa was truly dead. Right then, Kanchana clawed desperately at the wreckage, trying to pull me out. But Eden told her it was too late. After such a brutal scene, there was no way I could have survived. Kanchana ignored him, working even faster. She insisted that my regeneration was different from other power users. If they could get me out before the sand vanished, I might still make it. Seeing her so determined, Eden joined in, digging and cursing me for being an idiot willing to die with a Rakshasa. Meanwhile, I found myself in a strange space. Everything was dark, my body numb, and the constant chatter of the language Rakshasa was finally gone. Had I really killed him? I wondered what he'd wanted to say in the end. Just then, the Rakshasa's voice echoed in my ear again. He said the abyss was looking for me, that I should remember my mission. As I groggily tried to ask what mission, the language Rakshasa suddenly shouted, "Wake up." I snapped my eyes open. Before I could figure out where I was, my stomach rumbled loudly. Out of nowhere, my shirt ripped apart and a hand burst from my abdomen. Then, the wolf-shaped monster from my memories appeared before me. It cupped my face and asked, "Remember me?" Sweating and terrified, I stared at it. Another sealed memory came flooding back. I saw my childhood self staring in horror at a monster covered in drooling mouths. Panicked, I clung to my father's sleeve and said, "Dad, it's a monster. We have to run." But my father grabbed me, telling me to fight that thing from now on. I cried, asking why. He said I needed to gain its special Rakshasa power, that only then could I enter the abyss. I begged for mercy as my father dragged me along the ground, but he just threw me straight at the Rakshasa. It was a memory I never wanted to relive. Meanwhile, with the car door still stuck, Eden snapped his fingers to activate his power before the sand vanished. The crushed car door popped open, and he hurried to pull out the remaining wreckage. Finally finding me inside, I was a mangled mess, my bones shattered, body flattened. Eden and Kangchana stared in horror, eyes wide. No hope. He's done for. Even the healing sand is gone. He can't possibly survive. But at the brink of death, I suddenly coughed up a mouthful of yellow sand. In an instant, every bone in my body knitted back together. The sight was so shocking that both level 7s were left speechless. After all, only Rakshasa could spit out yellow sand. Yet here I was, a supposed level 1, producing it just like a Rakshasa. Once I'd recovered, I flopped down and dozed off as if nothing had happened. Eden immediately started stomping on my back, demanding to know what I was. I woke up dazed and confused. Eden grabbed me by the collar, hauled me up, and asked why I just spat out yellow sand like a Rakshasa. Was that also part of the gluttony power? At his question, I suddenly remembered. After killing the language Rakshasa, a forgotten memory had returned. The gluttony power hadn't just awakened recently, I'd had it since childhood. It all started when my father forced me into the forest to fight the gluttony Rakshasa alone. But before I could figure out why my father did it, my long-dormant panic disorder struck again. I collapsed, gasping on the ground. Eden stared at me in shock, asking what was wrong and why I'd suddenly fallen. Kangchana stepped in, holding Eden back, saying it was probably a panic attack and telling him not to disturb me. She said this should remain a secret between the three of us. Eden shrugged her hand off his shoulder and growled, "So we're just not going to report this to HQ. You're just going to let a monster like him go." Kangchana patiently explained that since we didn't know why I could spit yellow sand, reporting it now could put my life at risk. Eden leaned in menacingly, asking what if I turned as dangerous as a Rakshasa. But Kangchana's eyes were firm as she said she didn't believe I'd do anything dangerous. Eden tossed his hair and said, "Whatever. I don't care what he turns into." And so, the three of us agreed to keep my yellow sand ability a secret. But after I woke up and realized I could spit yellow sand like a Rakshasa, I felt deeply troubled. What exactly was the gluttony Rakshasa? Why could I spit yellow sand too? As I wondered if I was turning into a monster, I saw another hallucination. My reflection in the subway glass had become a gluttony Rakshasa. Terrified, I staggered backward, right into Nam Yosak, who asked what I was doing and told me not to act weird on the subway. Clutching my chest, I said I'd seen a strange vision and asked if he had time to talk. Nam Yosak raised his hand to refuse, saying he had a strict rule against hanging out with coworkers after hours. His answer stung. I'd thought he was the most approachable member of the team. Right then his phone buzzed. He answered. It was his old colleague Kim Wooju. So I tagged along with Nam Yosak to a little tavern. Nam Yosak, already tipsy, pointed at Kim Wooju and told him to apply for a transfer out of the Jiayang Mountain team. Kim Wooju didn't answer right away, instead asking who I was. Nam Yosak grumbled, asking why I'd followed him. Slumped on the table and half drunk, I told him I was feeling down too and didn't want to be alone. After some conversation, I finally learned the whole story. Turns out Kim Wooju was being bullied at Jiayang Mountain and wanted to quit, so he called up Nam Yosak. Nam Yosak had once been on that team too, and had suffered worse than anyone. But unlike the gentle Kim Wooju, Nam Yosak had fought back, causing a scene and getting himself transferred to the Ganghwa Island team. Hearing this, I was furious. What kind of people were on the Jiayang Mountain team? How could they be so awful? Nam Yosak stared into his glass for a while, then said those guys were all devils. A bunch of scum gathered together. He told me seriously that there were plenty of bad people among special public servants. They were as dangerous as Rakshasa. If Rakshasa were monsters in the eyes of power users, then those people were like Rakshasa to regular humans. His words made me think of what Eden had said earlier that day. Was I going to become as dangerous as a Rakshasa too? In the end, Kim Wooju couldn't hold his liquor and passed out drunk. Nam Yosak and I decided to drop Kim Wooju off at his parents' shop and leave once we'd handed him over. But as soon as Nam Yosak opened the door, his eyes went wide in shock at the sight before him. Sitting inside were the members of the Jiayang Mountain team. While Nam Yosak stood there frozen, a burly chest slammed into him. A red-haired guy stared at Nam Yosak with a sly grin. "We came looking for Kim Wooju, but what a nice surprise to run into you instead." With that, he kicked Nam Yosak to the floor, then began ruthlessly pummeling him, saying if he wanted to leave the team, he should have just gone quietly. How dare he set fire to the office? Just then, I finally arrived, carrying Kim Wooju on my back, and grabbed the red-haired guy's arm, demanding to know why a team of public servants was beating up their own. The red-haired guy glared at me, asking who I was. I told him I was with the Manhwa Island team, just like Nam Yosak. He just burst out laughing. Before I could react, he punched me in the face, sending both me and Kim Wooju flying several meters. He wiped his arms, sneering, disgusting. "How can you even claim to be from a weakling team like that?" Then he kicked Nam Yosak again, saying weaklings like us just made him want to beat us senseless. He pinned Nam Yosak down, raining punches on his face, saying it was because Nam Yosak had reported them to HQ, getting the team punished for months. He'd been looking everywhere for Nam Yosak to finish him off. The other members of the Jiayang Mountain team just watched with smiles, making no move to stop him. Rage burned inside me, and yellow sand began to drift from my mouth. Just then, the shop door suddenly flew open. Before the red-haired guy could react, a foot landed squarely on his face, sending him chair and all crashing to the floor. The Jiayang team members all sprang to their feet, demanding to know who it was. Eden stood there cool as ever, saying he was one of those weaklings from Manhwa Island they'd been talking about. He strode over to me, warning that if I dared spit out yellow sand here, I'd be dead. That's when I realized I'd started doing it unconsciously. I quickly covered my mouth and asked Eden why he was here. Turns out Eden had been tailing me since the end of the workday, worried I'd cause trouble. But he wasn't the only one. Kang Chana had followed me too. As soon as she came in and saw the scene, she rushed over to check on Nam Yosak. Seeing Nam Yosak battered and bloody, Kang Chana glared at the Jiayang team, saying she didn't care why they attacked her teammate, but now she was taking Nam Yosak. But a short-haired woman grabbed the red-haired guy's arm and refused, saying after what we'd done to their teammate, there was no way we were leaving so easily. The bespectacled man chimed in, saying as Nam Yosak's former co-worker, he still had unfinished business. Kang Chana asked why, as fellow public servants, they insisted on causing trouble and risking punishment. The short-haired woman retorted that if anyone was getting punished, it should be us. While the argument escalated, the red-haired guy came to and immediately charged at Eden. Eden just smirked. He was itching for a fight too, and charged right back. But even though it was supposed to be one-on-one, the bespectacled man jumped in too. I didn't want to see Eden get ganged up on, so I started to help, but Kang Chana stopped me, saying if I transformed, things would get out of hand. She quickly scanned the shop and found a handy weapon in the corner. Meanwhile, Eden was losing ground 2-on-1, with the bespectacled guy grabbing his arms from behind while the red-haired guy swung a chair at his head. But before he could strike, an attack landed on his waist. Kang Chana wielded a broom with lethal precision, then cracked it over the bespectacled man's leg, sending him rolling on the floor in pain. The red-haired guy tried to get up and fight back, but Kang Chana pointed the broken broom at him, warning him to back off unless he wanted more. At that moment, a sleepy middle-aged man wandered in, asking how the shop turned into a public servant brawl while he was in the restroom. Kang Chana asked who he was. He introduced himself as the Jiayang Mountain Yellow Sand Response Team Leader from the Environment Ministry. Kang Chana thought she'd finally found someone reasonable, so she explained that their team had attacked ours, which led to the fight, and asked him to deal with it properly. But before she could finish, the team leader punched her in the face, saying, "If you're not a normal person, don't mess with my people." Seeing Chief King go down so hard, rage flared inside me and yellow sand streamed from my mouth. Eden tried to stop me, but I lunged straight at the Jiayang team leader. Before he could react, my fist slammed into his face, sending him flying several meters until he crashed into a wall. As yellow sand filled the shop, the Jiayang team was stunned. Eden put a hand to his forehead, thinking, this is bad. I hurried to Kang Chana's side, asking if she was all right. She scolded me, "Didn't I tell you not to use the yellow sand?" I apologized, saying I got angry when I saw her get hit and lost control. The Jiayang team leader, still lying there, started laughing, saying I wasn't a Rakshasa but could spit yellow sand. What exactly was I? He tried to recruit me, inviting me to join them. But remembering what Nam Yosak had said in the bar, I refused without hesitation. Are you kidding? There's no way I'd join a team of scum like you. The Jiayang team leader grinned wickedly, saying it was a shame and that he couldn't just let me go tonight. With plenty of yellow sand in the air, he suggested a showdown between the Jiayang and Ganghwa teams. A battle of power users, since fighting Rakshasa every day was boring. All three of us stared at him in shock. These Jiayang people really were lunatics. But the team leader just sat on a bench calmly eating seaweed and calling everyone to line up. Kang Chana tried to refuse, saying the whole thing was ridiculous. He ignored her, held up a finger and laid out the rules, a best-of-3 one-on-one format. The winner gets to take Nam Yosak. He glanced at the trembling Nam Yosak, saying if we won, he'd let bygones be bygones and never bother him again. Then he looked at me, and as for the Rakshasa human, if HQ finds out you can spit yellow sand, they'll never let you off easy. He made a shushing gesture, saying if I agreed to fight, he'd keep my secret. Kang Chana looked exasperated. This Jiayang team was full of weirdos, and even their team leader was hopeless. Eden suggested we just beat up their leader and be done with it. But Kang Chana said that would only make things worse. Their whole team would never let it go. The Jiayang team was already eager to fight, especially the red-haired guy. The team leader said, let's call it a friendly match between teams. First to surrender loses. He suddenly looked fierce, adding, but no killing. Anything else isn't humane. The three of us were left speechless. Was this a joke? Killing? That was never even on our minds. Eden couldn't wait. He whipped off his hat, pulled on his gloves, and said, fine. Let's fight. I've always wanted to see what it's like to go up against human power users. I quickly stepped in front of him, asking if he was crazy. Did he want to become just like those guys? But Kang Chana's next words shocked me. She pressed her thumb to her chin and said, let's do it Eden's way. But make sure to drag things out for as long as possible. Eden and I exchanged confused looks, asking why. Kang Chana huffed, you'll see. Who wants to go first? Eden rolled his shoulders, already impatient, and said he'd start. He didn't want to wait anymore. On the other side, the Jiayang Mountain team leader was also asking his team who wanted to go up. The bespectacled man took off his glasses, veins bulging on his right eye as he activated his ability. His power was to analyze an opponent's ability through eye contact. In no time, he finished his analysis, announcing that our Eden's power was the Rakshasa fracture. By breaking his own body, he could inflict damage on his opponent. The red-haired guy immediately volunteered, saying he had a score to settle with Eden and couldn't wait to beat his teeth in. He clenched his fist, and his arm transformed into several sharp wooden branches that shot toward Eden. But Eden didn't even flinch at the incoming attack, calmly snapping one of his own fingers. The attacking branches all shattered instantly. He flicked his hair, mocking the opponent for being so weak. But the red-haired guy just smiled. With another clench, the broken branches wrapped around Eden, binding him like a mummy. Turns out his power wasn't just controlling branches, but even the broken ones. In no time, Eden was completely immobilized. The red-haired guy taunted him, saying he couldn't even move a finger. Was he going to surrender like a coward? But Eden cursed him for being useless, saying there was still one more thing he could break. Suddenly, with a crunch, he bit through one of his molars, and the branches shattered apart in an explosion. While his opponent was distracted, Eden grabbed him by the neck, expressionless as he said, let's start by breaking your fifth vertebra just for fun. With a snap of his finger, the guy's fifth vertebra fractured. The red-haired man's lower body went limp, collapsing, but Eden yanked him up by the throat, saying, don't pass out yet. The show's just getting started. Next up is your neck. Are you ready? As Eden prepared to snap his fingers again, Kang Chana stopped him, saying, enough. Are you trying to kill someone here? She declared to the Jiayang Mountain leader that we'd won the first round. Only then did Eden release the shaking red-haired guy. The pain was so intense that the guy vomited repeatedly on the floor. He glanced back at his team leader, shuddering at the cold, indifferent look on his face. After thinking it over, the team leader just said, all right, let's keep going. Kang Chana tied back her hair, saying Eden's attack was too ruthless and didn't stall for long enough. Eden just brushed off his arm, saying he'd already tried to drag things out. Now ready to fight, Kang Chana beckoned with a finger, asking who was next. The bespectacled man analyzed Kang Chana and said she could forge iron with her blood. An iron-type ability. The only one who could face her was the short-haired woman, whose ability was a perfect match. The short-haired woman reached into her shirt and pulled out two of her own ribs. Her power was the Rakshasa bone blade. She could weaponize her own bones. Kang Chana warned her, maybe don't use knives, it's dangerous. But the woman ignored her, letting her spine morph into a blade, spider-like, as she leapt and spun in midair, slicing through the air. She just said, it's fine, and charged. Kang Chana immediately bit her wrist, and just as the attack landed, blocked it with a blood-forged blade. The clash of blades rang out, but the short-haired woman had hidden another blade behind her back, and stabbed Kang Chana in the waist during the stalemate. Wincing from the pain, Kang Chana knew she couldn't keep this up. She mustered all her strength, swinging hard to drive her opponent back, then pressed in aggressively. As the short-haired woman was still airborne and couldn't dodge, Kang Chana weaved through the oncoming bone blades and at the last second struck upward, splitting her opponent's chest wide open. The short-haired woman was knocked out of the fight, needing 2 teammates to help her stand. Kang Chana sheepishly asked, "Are you okay?" "Sorry, I didn't control my strength well." Eden and I couldn't help but praise her. She finished the fight in just 10 seconds. Eden even said she was amazing at stalling for time. Kang Chana blushed, explaining that she'd never fought humans before. She was used to killing Rakshasa and old habits die hard. The bespectacled man was sweating bullets. Weren't they supposed to be a bunch of weaklings? What's going on? But their leader just clapped indifferently and said, "Well, looks like there's only one fight left. Me against him." Kang Chana said it's already 2-0. There's no need for a final round. The team leader tilted his head. "No way. I only sat through those boring fights to see his power." He held up 3 fingers. "Since this is the main event, let's make it worth 3 points. Kang Chana tried to protest, but I stepped forward and said, "As you wish." I pointed at the team leader and shouted, "But only if I get to fight you." Nam Yosak and the others looked stunned. The team leader just grinned. Taking the chance, the bespectacled man tried to analyze my power, but as soon as he looked, the Rakshasa in his eye curled up in terror and his right eye exploded. Sweat poured down his face in terror. Is that guy really human? What the hell is he? But the team leader rejected my challenge, saying it was against the rules for a referee to fight. He curled his finger, taunting that he'd send out their strongest fighter instead. That person was Kim Wooju, the one who'd been drunk earlier. Now still bewildered, he was dragged forward by a teammate, shocked to see his teammates here and asking where his parents were. The Jiayang leader whispered that his parents had already gone home, so there was nothing to worry about. He shoved Kim Wooju forward, saying I was to fight their best, Kim Wooju. Nam Yosak, eyes brimming with tears, tried to intervene, begging his old leader to stop. But there was no reasoning with a bully like that. The leader shot him a cold glare, telling him to shut up. "We're not done with you, Nam Yosak. After this fight, I'll deal with you too." He turned to Kim Wooju and said menacingly that if he performed well, maybe his transfer request would be approved. Under this pressure, Kim Wooju reluctantly stepped forward. But as soon as he did, a look of shock crossed my face. My language Rakshasa power had activated on its own, and my mouth began spitting out vicious words that stabbed straight into Kim Wooju's heart, attacking his appearance, his resume, and every aspect of his life. At the same time, images from Kim Wooju's memories flashed in my mind. His deepest trauma was watching Nam Yosak get bullied. Realizing I was about to blurt out something awful, and that the snake blade in my mouth was about to emerge, I desperately clamped a hand over my mouth to stop it. But the snake blade still broke through my palm and my mouth unleashed a verbal assault. "When Nam Yosak was bullied in your place, were you happy? Were you relieved it wasn't you?" Kim Wooju froze, the words piercing his soul and triggering heart wound conditions. Panicked, I tried to stop the snake blade from emerging but failed. It shot out, stabbing him through the chest. I rushed forward, asking if he was all right, apologizing that I couldn't control my power. Kim Wooju's eyes were squeezed shut, tears streaming down as he whispered, "I'm sorry." Then, to my shock, he activated his own ability. A stream of toxic pus burst from his body. He was a poison Rakshasa user. At such close range, there was no way to dodge. I was drenched in his venom, my flesh corroded. Eden and Kang Chana tried to run to my aid, but the Jiayang leader blocked their way, reminding them not to interfere. "The match isn't over yet." He strolled over to me, propping his chin on his hand, and asked if I wanted to surrender. Poison would corrode all my organs. Half my face eaten away, I replied, "Are you kidding? I never said I'd give up." The Jiayang leader said, "Then stop wasting time and show us what you can do." He pointed to the crumpled Kim Wooju. "If you want to win, attack him. That's the only way to end the game." I pushed myself up, declaring I didn't care about his rules, then sprang to my feet, clenching my fist and roaring, "Screw your rules. If I beat you, the game ends anyway." But as I closed in, the team leader remained calm. "If you want to play, you play by my rules." He suddenly yanked his tie tight, shouting 8 times, and activated his Rakshasa power. At once, a crushing force slammed down on my body, pinning me to the ground. Everyone in the room with Rakshasa powers was flattened by the gravity. Eden forced himself upright, asking what was going on and what this oppressive force was. Nam Yosak, gasping on the floor, explained, "That's the Jiayang team leader's power. Just stay down and breathe shallowly. He's a level 9 gravity Rakshasa user." The leader admired the sight of everyone kneeling, saying how much he enjoyed it. He strolled over to me, watching as my face slowly regenerated, and asked what my body was made of, since I could heal as fast as the acid burned. He wondered what would happen if he increased the gravity just for me. He yanked his tie again, and my back cracked with an awful sound, blood and yellow sand spurting from my mouth. He idly smeared the yellow sand in his fingers. "The more pain you're in, the thicker the sand you spit out. Looks like the Rakshasa that gave you your power was pretty special." Tears streamed from the pain, but his words made me pause. Now that I thought about it, the Rakshasa in my memories really was different. It had eyes no Rakshasa should have. But this wasn't the time to dwell on that. I needed to act. If I wanted to stop him, I had to use the language Rakshasa's ability. But when I activated it, nothing happened. The language Rakshasa refused to attack, as if it couldn't find a weakness. A chill ran down my spine. Could it be this guy is immune to psychological wounds? As I realized what a complete psychopath I was up against, he pulled a short blade from his pocket. He pointed it at me, saying he hated mysteries and wanted to dissect me to see where the yellow sand came from. He pressed the blade to my throat, debating whether to cut open my lungs or my neck first. But suddenly, the knife snapped in half. Eden had activated his fracture ability, shouting, "Now's your chance." At the same time, Kanchana bit her wrist and activated her power. As her blood-forged blade took form, she staggered forward and charged the Jiayang leader. But as she neared, he sensed her coming and yanked his tie again, increasing the room's gravity by 20 times. The ambush failed instantly. The leader, face red with exertion, loomed over Kanchana. The higher the gravity, the less oxygen your brain gets. Eventually, you'll black out. I called out to Chief Kang, afraid he'd hurt her, but all he did was take her blood blade, then stood up and looked down at me arrogantly. Now there's no one to get in the way. Let's get back to our little dissection game. Pinned by the crushing force, I could barely breathe, panic rising as I realized I might lose consciousness. At that moment, there was a sudden knock at the door. The Jiayang Mountain team leader turned to look outside, asking who could be coming so late. He gripped the blood-forged blade tightly and shouted that the shop was closed for the night. But the person outside didn't leave. Instead, a black, liquid-like substance began seeping in through the gap under the door, instantly flooding over Kanchana and the others. Eden stared at the black ooze, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead as he wondered what on earth it was. He tried to move his arm away, but the gravity kept him pinned in place. But when Kanchana saw the darkness, she finally let out a shaky sigh of relief. "You're finally here. What took you so long?" Turns out, while Eden was fighting two power users at once, Kanchana had propped up Nam Yosak and, surveying the chaos inside the noodle shop, realized things were about to get way out of hand. So using Nam Yosak's body as cover, she managed to send an SOS to team leader Go Deokman. Now Go Deokman was standing outside the shop, activating his power through the yellow sand seeping under the door. Black liquid poured from the holes where his eyes should be. As a level 10 user, his ability was Dark Rakshasa. He gouged out his own eyes to let the power of darkness flow through the sockets. Nearly submerged in the black ooze, I was terrified, wondering what this sudden darkness was. The Jiayang Mountain team leader was also trapped in the sticky blackness. In the blink of an eye, the entire shop was engulfed. But the Jiayang team leader remained as calm as ever. He realized immediately that someone was using a darkness ability, but could only curse silently. Anyone enveloped by this darkness would lose all 6 senses. You couldn't hear, taste, or feel anything, as if you didn't exist at all. I felt that overwhelming sense of erasure in the dark, and it was unbearable. I kept touching my face, desperately trying to ground myself, but everything felt real and yet utterly unreal. The sensation, worse than death, made the yellow sand pour even thicker from my mouth. In contrast, the Jiayang team leader stayed perfectly composed. He was a man even the language Rakshasa couldn't find a weakness in. Suddenly, a pair of giant hands appeared behind him, and in the next instant, Go Deokman clamped a hand around his throat and the other on his weapon. But the team leader couldn't feel a thing, not even his own breathing, and as his consciousness faded, he passed out cold. Once Go Deokman had dealt with the Jiayang leader, his gaze turned to me. I was trembling uncontrollably with fear, unable to sense anything, desperately wishing someone would save me. I started biting my own hand, unable to stop. Go Deokman came up behind me and said, "That's enough." He grabbed me by the neck until I blacked out and the yellow sand stopped pouring from my mouth. With everything resolved, Go Deokman reached into his shirt pocket, pulled out 2 eyeballs and pressed them back into his sockets. As his eyes were restored, the darkness faded away, and in moments, all the black oozing darkness was gone, finally bringing the chaos to an end. Go Deokman looked down at my unconscious body, relieved. The yellow sand's finally gone. Kanchana staggered to her feet and said, "You finally made it." Go Deokman, dripping eye drops into his eyes, asked Kanchana and Eden why they didn't report Maru's yellow sand incident to him sooner. He glared at them fiercely, demanding if they didn't want their jobs anymore. Kanchana lowered her head and admitted fault, then begged Go Deokman to try and settle things with the Jiayang Mountain team leader. But Go Deokman told her it had gotten too big to sweep under the rug. After that, I was taken back to headquarters for detainment, kept under constant surveillance 24/7. I hung my head in despair, not knowing what fate awaited me. Meanwhile, a meeting was underway to discuss what to do with me. Minister Yu Yongyun proposed that I should be managed directly by HQ from now on. But Go Deokman firmly refused. Yu Yongyun stood up in anger, saying I could spit yellow sand like a Rakshasa, and demanded to know why Go Deokman would risk keeping someone so dangerous. Just look at the incident with the Jiayang Mountain team. What if he unleashed his ability in front of civilians next time? But Go Deokman remained composed, saying the Jiayang Mountain team started the whole thing and he trusted my character. There wouldn't be a repeat. He then turned the blame on director Jiang Ildu, asking if he knew the Jiayang leader purposely recruited the worst kinds of people. Making a psycho like that a team leader, isn't that your responsibility? Jiang Ildu just rested his chin on his hand, looking bored. Yu Yongyun scolded Go Deokman for speaking to the director like that in front of the staff. Jiang Ildu waved it off. He said the personal character of special officials wasn't important. He didn't care if the Jiayang leader was a psycho, so long as he was effective against the Rakshasa. Kang Chana was taken aback, about to protest, but Jiang Ildu kept going, saying they weren't like Go Deokman, hiding out on Ganghwa Island just because he hated fighting. Go Deokman didn't rise to the bait. He used Jiang's logic instead. Maru is also indispensable in the fight against Rakshasa and his character is beyond reproach. He glanced at Eden and Kang Chana, and those two can keep Maru in check. They're as tight as family. This sudden call-out made both of them jump. Jiang Ildu asked, and if Maru loses control again, can you handle it? Go Deokman stood up and said, no problem. I'll take responsibility. If there's nothing else, we're leaving. But as the three of them reached the door, Jiang Ildu called Eden back, saying there was something he needed to discuss. Though Eden was clearly reluctant, he had no choice but to comply. Thanks to Go Deokman's protection, I was released. I ran up to him, asking if I was really off the hook. And boss, what's with that rainbow tie of yours? Go Deokman tugged his tie and said, the punishment is 3 months' pay docked for all three of you. I was so shocked I felt petrified, no less than when I first saw his tie. He told me to be grateful. We were only safe because Ganghwa Island team agreed to take responsibility. If I caused trouble again, no one knew what might happen. He added that director Jiang Ildu was a lot scarier than he looked. He might even become our enemy one day. Meanwhile, in the conference room, Jiang Ildu was asking Eden if he could put Maru down if he ever went berserk again. Eden was stunned, then turned away, trying to sound calm. What kind of question is that? He said he refused, and since it had been 20 years since they last met, if that was all Jiang had to say, he was leaving. Jiang Ildu's face turned serious, ordering him to sit. This wasn't a father's request, it was a director's command. Maru can no longer be considered an ordinary Rakshasa ability user. Anyone who can spit out yellow sand is basically a Rakshasa, and may become the enemy of all ability users someday. Thanks to the Ganghwa Island team, I was allowed to live with them in a nearby apartment. But as soon as I walked in, I was appalled by the mess. Clothes everywhere, filth and clutter that hadn't been cleaned in ages. This was supposed to be the Ganghwa Island team's living quarters. Even when I was cramming for exams, it was never this bad. Just then Go Deokman strolled out shirtless, scratching his shoulder, saying I'd be bunking with him from now on. I stared at him in horror. Did it really have to be this way? And what was he even doing with his hand? Go Deokman yawned, then stuck his other hand down his pants, saying the only way to keep me out of trouble was to keep watch 24/7. He slung an arm over my shoulders, telling me we'd go everywhere together. Work, home, never to be apart. As I looked at his hand on my shoulder, I thought the world had truly gone mad. The next morning at work, I immediately felt the fiery glare of Chief Yun Ji-won. I nervously asked if she wanted to say something. She pointed 2 fingers at her eyes, then at me, warning that if I dared spit yellow sand in the office, I was dead. Nam Yosak, ever the troublemaker, told her not to provoke me. What if I started spitting yellow sand in anger? I whirled around in my chair, shocked. How could he say that? Didn't he realize he was the reason I ended up like this? Unable to voice my frustration, I could only sigh. But even that tiny action caught Kim Ibak's attention as he passed behind me. He suddenly asked if I just sighed, startling me. Go Deokman rushed over, grabbing my mouth in a panic, checking to see if I'd started spitting yellow sand from the stress of sighing. I quickly reassured him I don't think so. Frustrated, I stomped off to the bathroom, wondering if they all just saw me as a monster. Would I not even be allowed to breathe anymore? At the bathroom door, I ran right into Eden. He stared at me, recalling what his father, the director, had said. Maru can't be seen as a normal ability user anymore. Anyone who can spit yellow sand is no different from a Rakshasa, and could become the enemy of all ability users. Seeing Eden staring at me, I snapped, demanding to know what he was looking at. Was he going to nag me too? But Eden just replied coldly, why would I say that? What you become has nothing to do with me. His strange attitude threw me off. Wasn't he always acting like he wanted to eat me? Why was he like this today? Just then a voice behind me asked, are you okay? I spun around angrily, wondering when these people would ever give it a rest. But it turned out to be Kang Chana and the newly transferred Kim Wooju. Kang Chana told Kim Wooju it was his first day with the Ganghwa Island team. If he had any questions, just ask. Kim Wooju bowed deeply in thanks. Then Kang Chana leaned in and asked to check my eyes. Blushing, I looked down and said, "You want to check the color? I haven't spat any yellow sand." "Don't worry." Kang Chana gently told me not to be upset by the others' behavior. "Everyone's just worried that if something goes wrong, the team won't be able to protect you. They're only acting this way because they care." Her words finally brought me a little peace. But when everyone left for missions, I was left bored and empty. Afraid I'd cause trouble again, I was stuck with office work. It was honestly mind-numbing. I stared at the printouts, thinking that Go Deokman's idea of taking responsibility just meant never letting me go out in the field. Just then, the front door swung open. Nero and Nambal strode in, both radiating aggression. I asked who they were. Nambal lunged at me with a fist before I could react, hitting me so hard I went flying. He grabbed my dazed self off the floor, demanding that I spit yellow sand for him to see. Even though I was furious at this stranger attacking me, Kang Chana's advice echoed in my mind and my anger vanished. I couldn't risk causing more trouble. Nambal yanked me up by the collar, fist raised, demanding that I transform or else he'd smash my face. But in the next moment, a big foot slammed into his face. It was his brother Nero. Nero helped me up, apologizing for his brother's ignorance, and introduced them as agents sent from HQ. I wiped my bloody nose, asking if they were here to test me. Nero confirmed, explaining his brother was just eager to meet me because he was a fan. I thought to myself what a pair of weird twins these were. The Nambal beamed at me and reached out to shake my hand. "Honored to meet you, King Maru." Hearing him call me King Maru, I blushed, raising my hands innocently. Nambal came closer, poking and prodding me, saying that being able to spit yellow sand made me seem even more impressive than director Jiang Ildu. I hesitantly asked if he really meant me. Nambal gave me a big thumbs up, insisting I was the strongest Rakshasa user of all, and that he admired me a lot. That rare praise left me in a daze until after work. Was I really as amazing as Nambal said? Just then, I spotted Kim Wooju up ahead, looking lost. I asked if something had happened and why he hadn't gone home. He seemed startled, then admitted something was wrong. He needed my help in his assigned area. Apparently, the detector and emergency comms there weren't working. Even after fiddling with them, nothing changed. Behind me, Kim Wooju apologized nervously, saying he might have broken them earlier by accident. He just didn't want everyone here to hate him too, so he kept quiet. I smiled and assured him that on the Ganghwa Island team, nobody would blame him for a mistake. Everyone here was kind, but then my expression turned grim, realizing my own experience didn't really back that up. Kim Wooju thanked me, saying he still owed me for last time. Embarrassed, I scratched my head and said not to worry. But then he added, "So in front of me, you can spit out yellow sand as much as you want." At first, I didn't get it, asking what yellow sand he meant. When I realized, my face turned pale. Kim Wooju said he thought the yellow sand was from me. So what was all the sand in the air? Alarmed, I quickly scanned the area. Sure enough, in the woods nearby, I spotted a young Rakshasa with 9 bloody beads embedded in its chest. Kim Wooju hid behind me, blaming himself for breaking the alarm. I reassured him it was fine. Judging by the yellow sand concentration, it was probably just a level 1 Rakshasa, which should be easy to handle. Besides, I'd just been called King Maru. I had to live up to it. I crouched down, opened my jaws, and lunged at the Rakshasa. Before it could react, I bit through its neck and yanked back, blood spraying everywhere. Even though it was just a level 1, this was the only way to finish it instantly. Kim Wooju clapped and cheered, "Amazing. You got it in one move." But I couldn't feel happy. The yellow sand wasn't fading. In fact, it was getting thicker. The Rakshasa's corpse began to crack open. And then something that filled me with horror happened. From the body of the level 1 Rakshasa, another Rakshasa emerged. And one of the blood beads on its chest burst. Not only had it not died, it had evolved into a level 2 Rakshasa.